and welcome to the 4Corners podcast. I'm Brad, joined, as most weeks, joined by Matt and Shad. How are you doing this week, gentlemen?
Good. You guys had a lively chat, a lively show last week. I was in the lovely state of Texas for Thanksgiving, but you guys had some special guests on, which got a lot of views toward the end. Like that was fun.
Yeah, definitely. And it was interesting hearing from new fans like what they were drawn to, um, and having two people like specifically them. Um, they had very distinct things they liked between the two of them too. Because she was much more. She seems like if I was giving her a list versus him, she would just get a bunch of old school like bloody tags with like blowjob teams and stuff because that seems to be her like. That was the vibe I was getting from her is that she just wanted like mayhem and blood and guts type stuff.
Not necessarily, but she does enjoy that.
And especially like probably the pageantry of like the old Southern style promotions too would work for her in
Maybe
the
so.
character development.
I haven't really sent them that much of that stuff, but we'll see what kind of response comes out of it.
Yeah. So we have we're doing something we haven't done in a while. So we're doing a singular match this week, which we'll be discussing in our main event. And that is going to be so this is from September 2nd of this year, and that is going to be Sareee and Mayu Iwatani versus Chihiro Hashimoto and Veny. Now, if you're trying to wonder what promotion this is like a one shot. So you see it a lot in joshi, but it's something you see a lot in Japan, or just these like one-off shows. So if to give an idea, it might be like Shad being like, "Oh, it's Shad's like 1000th wrestling match," and I'm booking my own show with blackjack and hookers and Alex Angel and J.R. Rock and Duke.
And Duke, yeah. It's kind of like the what was it? The all-in indie show that kind of kicked off where we are now.
Yeah, or like the GCW like Wombat shows or Bloodsport or that sort of stuff. But we have a topic first for the night, and that is going to be it's specifically drama and comedy TV shows. So it is essentially like, what is our favorite shows that have a complete run?
Yeah,
on them
that didn't. They're not still ongoing. They got to have an ending to them. Because I find it's really hard to have a good answer to someone to like how good a show is if you never got an ending to it. Firefly, I enjoyed Firefly a lot. I still do, but we never got it past the first season, which in hindsight is probably a good thing. But there's not a finish to it, so I can't call it a completed product.
Yeah, are there things that end on like cliffhangers and stuff?
Yeah. So
there are a lot of shows out there that should just end and not just keep going on and on and on.
Yeah, Battlestar Galactica should have ended like a season earlier than it did. Buffy also should have ended a season early. Angel.
I never got into either one of those.
Angel's a little better than Buffy, but I think Buffy's still one of the best shows ever, even though its tendrils have like ruined things because it's like prototypical like Marvel style quipping.
Well,
it's the Josh Whedonism of people, where a lot of people kind of took that and instead of actually writing like smartly, they just decided like to do the quips and everything. It's like, well, that just happened, and it's like ugh.
Yeah,
eh.
It's the modern Hollywood. It's the modern Hollywood like, no, it's okay. We're not taking it seriously. Like, don't feel anything. Don't like think about anything. Like that's kind of like what I feel like when they start doing like the modern Marvel style quipping, where it's like, no, no, it's okay, we're not taking this seriously.
Yeah.
You just kind of like there's an aspect of having a someone who deals with the stress by mouthing off, but then it kind of robs a lot of the gravity out of what you're trying to do if you turn everything into a joke.
Well, I think where that works. I think a perfect example of a movie where quipping works is the original Ghostbusters movie. But it's very dry in that movie, but it's also like you can tell they're doing that in like a terrible situation where they're trying to, keep their sanity. Well, and Venkman's just that way in
I
general.
mean, it that is a comedy, so there's obviously supposed to be humor, but it is done in a way that it feels. It's I don't really want to use the word organic, but it feels it's not like oh, and here's the punchline. Like the punchlines come, but they feel more natural.
It's
Like one of the
it
lines where it's like,
fits.
"Tell them about the Twinkie," and it's
Yeah.
like
Or
you
like
get it's funny in the context, but it's
when
contextual. Maybe that's
when
it's
Gozer
contextual.
when Gozer blasts them and Winston's like, "When a god asks if someone asks you if you're a god, you say yes."
Yes, yeah,
So I call that it. It's either contextually appropriate, proper characterization, or sometimes I'll misuse the term verisimilitude, where it makes sense it makes sense in its own setting. It's internally consistent. It makes sense with what you're doing. But
The weird
it
callbacks in movies they don't earn too bothers me. Like I watched Alien Romulus this weekend, and at the end, like they do the "you bitch" line, and it's
mhm.
like you're not Sigourney Weaver. Like you're not anywhere near as cool as she was in the first one. Like you don't get to use that line. It's just douchey when you say it, versus cool when she said it in the first movie.
Yeah, it's you're doing it for the cheap pop. You're not doing it because it's fitting. So
Yeah,
well, that's unfortunately that's I guess what a lot of I think Hollywood has become. It's just it's playing off nostalgia. I mean, really think about for the last like several years. Let's go even go 5 years. Like what movies are being produced and actually thrown up there? Well, maybe 5 years is not even like fair because we have COVID
yeah,
to deal with and like the writer slash actor strike. But if you want to even do like 10 years back, like it's it's either existing intellectual properties for the most part, or it's just sequel. Like, well, that falls into existing intellectual property. But I mean, it's either sequels of that property or it's adaptations of stuff that has already existed in some form.
reboots and
Or
remakes.
yeah, so it's a lot of like nostalgia. It's a lot of like callbacks. Occasionally, you might get something that's um, a little more interesting or done, but it's still kind of like a throwback to those things. So it's playing on nostalgia. Or you occasionally, like the small fraction, you get stuff that's actually like new.
yeah.
Um,
So it is the cynical part of my brain says that calls it the venture capitalism of Hollywood, wherein you don't make anything unless you're you know certain it's going to make money, and even then they still whiff. But oh gosh, how do we know this is going to make money? People don't know what it is. Well, we
Yeah.
can't do that. It has to be sequels. It has to be remakes. It has to be Disney trying to make a live action version of something they had 20 years ago that they don't need to do because the original's still better.
Yeah.
Because the live action Aladdin can,
That
you
movie's
know,
that
kiss my white ass.
that movie is one of the worst fucking movies I've ever seen. And they
the
butcher.
live action one.
Yes, it's terrible. Like they totally butcher Aladdin's character in that. Like one of the best scenes that like really gave him like a certain like oomph in the original is like tricking the genie into giving him a free wish.
Mm-hmm.
And he doesn't do that in the original.
Or in the remake.
In the remake. Like he doesn't do that.
Yeah,
The Prince Ali entrance piece, with the whole thing, in the original, the genie's running around like playing hype man and firing the crowd up and all that sort of stuff. The only part of the remake that I've seen was the redo of the Prince Ali entrance, and they completely missed the point of it. They don't have any idea what the hell they're doing with it. They're just like, oh, Will Smith's singing the same words, isn't that it? It's like, no, that's not what this entrance is about. That's not the point.
I would argue that it probably is done by people who, I mean, the original is like 30 years old at this point. Like it's probably people who never saw the original one or didn't care. They don't care, and that's a lot of. First off, sidebar, like we could literally spend the rest of the show and spend like a couple hours just talking about the failings of Disney, because I was friends with a guy not that long ago who he wasn't even someone who approaches it like our friend Tim, who obviously is very down on Disney for, I guess, some of the political things that it's been alleged that they've creeped
Let's
in or
just
whatever.
let's just say their complete and utter butchering of Star Wars and now wearing its dead corpse, skin
Yeah.
is like yeah.
Oh, I could say quite a lot from even like just a non-political perspective.
Let me use a good line for you real quick. I'm sorry, Matt. I'm cutting you off.
But
would you use the Force on me? I'd use the Force on me.
Oh God, hard.
I'd use the Force so hard. I think that I agree that they have completely butchered Star Wars and kind of Marvel at this point. Marvel, at least the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It's
I think. Well, Captain America 4 looks like absolute dog shit, but I think
they
Marvel,
all look like.
I think
Thunderbolts doesn't look really much better.
I know. They could still.
There really isn't a lot.
They could still salvage Marvel. Marvel's not like the thing is they haven't. So Star Wars, they have damaged Star Wars so terribly that
it's horrible. Yeah.
But Marvel, they haven't done that much damage yet. And I wanted to throw one in there while I'm still thinking about, but Deadpool and Wolverine had a really funny moment in it where Chris Evans shows up and Deadpool does the say the line Bart because he expects him to say Avengers Assemble, and instead he says Flame On because they have Chris Evans as the Human Torch in that movie. And also Wesley Snipes' line about there's only one blade and there's ever only going to be one blade is like horribly accurate because that movie's not happening. But I don't think
well, hold on, pause. Do you know the latest? The Blade movie has been a mess. There are some people who've rumored that the reason why it's been such a mess, and I have no idea if this is true, and it could be complete bullshit that someone has made up. But the rumor that the reason why it's such a mess is because everything in the movie and sort of like society, and I'm not trying to make like a weird male-centric point, but so much of our society, it's like, oh, it has some girl power. The rumor is that they wanted, or the plot of Blade was supposed to be Blade has a daughter, and that it's really like she's going to be the focus, and Blade's like retiring at the end of the movie, like now the daughter's going to take over, and it's like you've missed the whole point of Blade. But allegedly, if that is what's happening, like Mahershala Ali, who was cast as Blade, was kind of like not feeling it. So I don't know, but
it
I
pisses
don't know
me
if
off
that's true.
they
got
a decent actor for it too.
Oh yeah, they got a great actor. He's won like he won 2 Oscars, right? Like he's an incredibly good actor, and you got a big name guy. I don't know what's happening with it. Something has happened because the movie has been in production hell for like a while. But the latest, and this is kind of like I had to roll my eyes. It probably will make the film. First off, the film will probably happen now, and it will probably be better in some respects. But because of the success of Deadpool and Wolverine, they're now reworking the film probably entirely, and it's now going to be a multiversal film where you are going to have co-stars Mahershala Ali and Wesley Snipes as Blade, both as Blade.
No more.
So it's going to be Blade and Blade.
I thought the whole point of Deadpool and Wolverine was the multiverse sucks.
And they're clearly going forward with it because the whole point of like now that they've jettisoned Kang, they're still working it in because now it's going to be the rumored plot for the upcoming Avengers movie, the next Avengers movie, is that they're going to be recruiting superheroes from across the multiverse to face the Tony Stark version of Doctor Doom, I guess, or somehow it's Robert Downey Jr. as Dr. Victor Von Doom. Look, you mentioned Fantastic Four. Like, yeah, we had the Fantastic Four from back in the day. They're redone Fantastic Four. I had a lot of hopes for that. I'm like, oh, maybe it's going to be good. And then they chose to make it a period piece set in the 60s, which I guess
I'd be okay with that.
I should keep an open mind, but I don't know. Like, I feel like they're going to be too cute. And I don't know.
But it's like, my problem with Fantastic Four is like, can you just make one fucking movie, Disney, that doesn't have Pedro Pascal in it, please? I'm begging you, no more.
I like Pedro Pascal.
I do. I like him, but he's in fucking everything.
He shouldn't be Reed Richards.
No,
like they should not have gone with that. I don't know why. I guess people maybe started hating on it, or they didn't. But based upon like the second Doctor Strange, like I actually would have been okay with John Krasinski as Reed Richards. He's a good actor. He's pretty good. He's entertaining and stuff beyond The Office. Like if you actually saw Jack Ryan, that was pretty good. He could make Reed Richards likable. Yeah.
I don't need a likable Reed though. Like Reed's supposed to be kind of like, they've taken it too far in like the in the modern day. Like they kind of missed the point of like early Reed, but like because like in the early Fantastic Four, I know Shad doesn't like Reed, but like Reed is not necessarily like a bad person. Like Reed is a very patriarchal figure, but he's also just absolutely gutted by what happened to them. And like, so he's kind of distant because of that, because of all the guilt. Like a lot of his time is spent like trying to fix like Ben and things like that. But he's also so smart, he has trouble relating to people too.
I kind of look at, it's not a great analogy, but I kind of think of Reed Richards being the superhero equivalent of an absent-minded professor.
Well, he
means well, but he's still he screws it up because he's not.
In the original comics, he's kind of like the archetype of like if you look at the real early stuff, like the first 100 issues, like he is kind of the 50s and 60s archetypal dad from TV sitcoms. That's kind of like what he is, because the main characters really of the early comics are Ben and Johnny, with Sue and Reed kind of playing the sitcom parents to their antics.
Yeah. To go back a second to Star Wars, Vectron had a good one where he says Sam Witwer had the best take. They tried to make Star Wars without actually knowing and fully understanding Star Wars. It's true. Yeah. But that's I feel like a lot of things now that they either, again, continuing like with nostalgia or franchising or existing intellectual property or remaking intellectual property. And it's done by people who don't really have an appreciation or understanding of the source material. I know Tim, I think on his streams, has talked about this before, or other people have criticized it. And this I do feel is like legit criticism, very valid criticism. And I recall, this is a dumb example, but I recall like it's probably been a few years at this point. Do you remember they were going to remake Thundercats, but in like
that Thundercats Go thing?
Yeah, like the Teen Titans Go type of style.
It was like Thundercats Raw or something, wasn't it?
Yeah, and it was done in like this weird, like super deformed thing.
Teen style. You said it right the first time. It was like the Teen Titans Go style.
Yeah, and people were kind of like, "What is this?" Because they remember Thundercats, and Thundercats. I mean, look, there's a lot of '80s property that they've redone or they're remaking that I feel they could, because to a certain extent, some of that franchises does lend itself to being remade and rebooted. I mean, Transformers. I guess G.I. Joe to an extent. So Thundercats, in theory,
I feel
He-Man, like, I mean, recently.
I rewatched Thundercats recently, and so it was better than I thought it'd be. But I actually disagree that you could necessarily remake it properly, because Like there's so much about like the Thundercats that's like so 80s. Like the big hair, like the Star Wars isms. Like there's so much of it that's of its period that I think w- wouldn't get brought over that you need to bring over. And I also don't want like furry perverts to have like something else they can ruin.
Oh, no, that's true. Well, in theory, I guess like a Thundercats remake, that you could rework it. You could do something where you could kind of keep it up to date, or do something new with it that's not like derivative, or enough with like the I'm deconstructing Thundercat, enough with that. But this, if you recall, like the Thundercats roar or whatever it's supposed to be, like people were kind of like hating on it, and the creator, the guy who was redoing it, he was kind of like, yeah, well, I never like watched or liked the original show, but you know, so what? And that just why?
The answer to the why are you working on this project then?
But look at
Exactly.
something.
And it's like I don't. Sorry to cut you off, Brett. I don't need people to be like, I have the Bible of Thundercats. Like my entire life has led to this. I don't necessarily need that, but you would want a guy behind it to be like, yeah, I've seen like the original show, and I like it. It's really cool. I have this different take that I think could be like funny or interesting. So I'm gonna try to be respectful of it, but we're going to go a different way because I think I'm not going to try to remake it entirely. So I'm going to do it justice in the sense that I'm going to make it wacky. That's going to be my interpretation. And like even like that sort of explanation, you could be like, I don't know if this is my thing, but you're at least a fan. Maybe you're trying to be like, like referential to it.
But like if you look at oh, my brain just locked. Okay, if you look at X-Men '97 that just came out this year, I think that show had its ups and downs, but it was obvious. It was obvious the creator liked the source material. And another good one, before it went off the rails and they fucked it all up. Harley Quinn was obviously like, it was goofy and weird, but it was also like a massive love letter to Batman at the same time, and like the Rogues Gallery. And there were such great little things in that like made sense. Like, Joker paying the Starbucks guy to write bang on all of Bane's coffees to bother him.
It's also kind of like Lower Decks, because Lower Decks does not mess with the Star Trek you know and love. It's like, no. These are the guys that serve on like the crappy ship, and so they don't have the same attitude that everybody. And it's like, okay, you know what? Like, I'm okay with this. Like, when we had Tex on, he made a statement where he said the thing that bugs him is called contempt of audience. You're making something but you don't like the people that you know are going to see it, like the Velma show, or whenever they made Joker Folie à Deux. It's like, when they made that second movie, it was like saying, you know, you people that liked the first one because you thought that the main character was a good guy, wrong. And it's like, okay, they missed the point.
Problematic.
But when you take your audience's face and rub it in the other thing, like you're taking a dog and rubbing their nose in shit to try and say this is bad, no one's gonna come see your stuff. Nobody wants to go to entertainment to be demeaned. They've got to, they can go to the red and white district for that.
The first Joker film, like Joaquin Phoenix literally won an Oscar for it. And they did take the perspective. It's like, it's really problematic that you like the Joker. And it's like, why would people not like the Joker in that movie? Because you literally set up the entire film, like 75% of the film. He's the butt monkey. He's a guy who like life has like screwed over. Everyone's screwing him over to the point where even like he doesn't know who his real father is. And his mother was kind of like abusive, like not neglectful, whatever. He's extreme underdog, and then finally he gets an opportunity to like strike back at society or people, and it's like, yeah, maybe he's not a good person because he's doing it through violence and hurting people and killing people, but it's also like you sympathize, because it's like, of course the guy who's been beaten down, if he rises up and all of a sudden like is the biting the hand who's been abusing him, it's like, wow, what a surprise that people kind of commiserate with that, because we all everyone has, especially now in society now, where it's like a lot of people feel disenfranchised, or they feel like they can't financially achieve certain things. They can't like. I mean, of course, like people go into actually look at the Joker, and it's not just like, oh, look at these incels. It's like no, like a lot of people in society are going to be like, I see myself a little bit in him because I feel I've been taken
He's
advantage
I
of.
feel like I feel like Hollywood needs to watch the Chris Rock OJ bit because that's what's going on that I think they don't understand. That if you don't know that bit, it's pretty much like the OJ bit with Chris Rock's like, I wouldn't kill her, but I understand.
yeah.
Like that's what I think was going on with the Joker. Whereas like he is
It's
like
yeah.
like you like I don't think like people I don't think like other than a couple of weirdos, and there was only one like idiot that ever like emulated like the crime thing, but like I think what they didn't see is Pete. Yeah, he's a sympathetic character, but it's like, well, yeah, then he went cuckoo bananas and kind of. But like I
Yeah.
don't. But like it's just because you have there's this weird like I don't know modern thing where it's like you can have sympathy for someone that kind of like ends up in a bad like going the wrong direction.
You can have sympathy for somebody who gets pushed too far and breaks and does something you wouldn't do, but you understand why they did it. Like
Yeah.
that's entirely possible. And yet, we don't get that. But we are kind of a field of where we were going to start.
Like I'll use
Well,
a real life example. Like there's a part of me with like Jeffrey Dahmer. It's like, man, like if someone just like when he was 17 years old, just like got him to a psychiatrist and got him medicated, like maybe like he turns out like differently.
Yeah.
well, maybe not. Yeah, maybe he doesn't turn out into eating.
Maybe he only
eating
like
people.
maybe he only like kills
Serial
like
killer ass.
maybe he only kills like 2 people.
Still.
It doesn't eat them.
Yeah. I want to go back really quickly because it was mentioned like the Disney live action. To me, that's really in my opinion, the gold standard of Hollywood being completely lazy, because you're not doing it better than a lot of times the original. I can't say that there's been a single one of those live action ones that I've been like, this is a better version of. No, like it's not, because it's in some respects it's prettier in the sense that you now have like the 2020s version of CGI, although CGI is kind of taking a nosedive from what it used to be, but you have like modern graphics and everything. So there's some visually that can be impressive, but they're not better films, and a lot of times they're worse because not even like you're not hiring the same quality of actors, but like we've mentioned, like the people who are making it don't understand what made the original classic.
Well, they're too long.
But
Like Little Mermaid's like a 2.5 hour long movie of a
yeah,
movie that was like, I think we even did it on the show and I guessed it within 2 minutes. I think it's like an 88-minute movie. The original is.
yeah, it's like an hour and a half, and it's like we did talk about it, I feel, in the show, and it's like, how long is it? 2.5. And it's like, and then some people were like, well, it doesn't make as much money. It's like, yeah, you're not going to make as much money doing like a 2.5 hour movie that's specifically designed for kids,
And
like mostly kids, because
and they
something
didn't
like
learn.
Avatar,
And they
can make.
I was gonna say the animals in that movie are terrifying. I don't know why no one has learned
yeah.
the lessons from that Cats movie. Don't do that. That's why Sonic is on its 3rd movie, is because they listened when everyone hated that first trailer and they redesigned him from the ground up.
Making it too human, like you hit the uncanny valley hard. So yeah, like the Sonic, it's like you just make them look like cartoons, and you have real life actors, and you just kind of have to just run with it, guys. Just they're from a different dimension or universe or whatever. Like that's why they look like anthropomorphic cartoon characters that have come to life. But going back, like again, the people making these films, the Disney live action films, don't really understand it, but it's just so creatively bankrupt that it's like, and the larger point is like Disney itself has been mismanaged. And I knew a guy who was a Disney fan, like he had like yearly annual passes to go to Disney parks, and like just go to the parks. He could be there every weekend if he wanted to, because he had the annual pass. He lived in California, like 30 minutes away from Disneyland. so you go all the time. And he would say like, yeah, it's mismanaged. Even the parks are run down, and they kind of are. I think it's taken a nosedive since COVID, since the pandemic.
Well, they've
But
been like squeezing. Don't they literally have like? Don't they literally like if you go in the park, you have to let them hold you by the ankles and shake you until all the money comes out of your
basically,
pockets?
yeah, it's incredibly expensive. We will probably, my family and I will probably go next year because we want to take our youngest there, and she's free until she's 3, and she's turning 2 soon. So we kind of need to go if we're going to go. But yeah, it's incredibly expensive, very, very expensive.
Because they did the,
Um,
they had like the fast pass, and then they brought in what, the genie pass.
Genie, which is worse. It's essentially, it's kind of like Fast Pass, but Fast Pass was,
Free.
I believe, free. Because I did it before, and you could game Fast Pass if you're smart. You could game it that it's like, I'm going to sign it. Now, there was some timing involved. It wasn't just like I can go on at 8 a.m. and line it up the rest of the day. You kind of had to do it at specific times. Like maybe every hour you check it. But you could game it that it's like all the main rides you want to hit, like Pirates of the Caribbean, like Haunted Mansion, like whatever. Like you could game it so it's like you can get decent times and not have to wait like an hour in line to get to some of the most popular rides using Fast Pass. But now with Genie, you have to pay for it, 1, and 2, you kind of don't have as much freedom. Let me go when the park opens at like 9. Let me go on Fast Pass to see when I can do Pirates of the Caribbean. It's like, oh, I can only go at 3:15 p.m. And it's like you now are married to doing it that time. And if you want to do other rides, it's like, oh, I want to do like Star Wars ride. Oh, I can do it only at 3:45. Well, shit. Like, am I gonna be done with Pirates? Am I gonna make it all the way? Like, it's not as good. It's not. It's worse. It's substantially worse than Fast Pass was. But to go back to my point, the point I was really gonna make is last week we were in Texas, and my daughter's favorite movie of all time, and her favorite Disney princess is Moana. And Moana 1, I think, came out 2015, so it's almost a 10-year-old movie. It'll be 10 years old next year.
Mm-hmm.
I actually talked about it before. I actually think it's a great movie. It's a really good animated movie. It's kind of almost a throwback to like the classic Disney and the structure and how it's done, and the songs are really good.
I feel like Rock
They just
carries it
released
pretty hard, honestly. And
Rocket.
my one weird
Rock.
thing with it is I don't understand why the pig and the chicken are in it, because they seem to have the same role, essentially, like the
Well,
cute,
that's the
fluffy
thing,
critter.
and they're not. Alan Tudyk, of course, voices Hey the chicken. He went to Oxford for it, even though he just makes chicken noises.
Juilliard, yeah.
Oh, Juilliard, sorry. They don't play the same role, and that's actually the joke, the kind of like the laughable thing in the first movie, is that the pig is prominently featured in the merchandise, and he's in the film at the very beginning, and then he's not seen again for an hour and a half until the ending. Like he's not on the adventure. It's the chicken.
Yeah.
Who is almost, he has the brain of a chicken, and that it's probably like the size of a jelly bean. He's not very smart.
No,
so
he's
he
pretty
gets
dumb
himself
by
too.
chicken standards too.
Yeah. But the movie is good. Like Moana is a great movie. We were in Texas. They had the debut this past Wednesday, of Moana 2. And if you actually look at the box office, it's been a massive hit. Like I think domestically in just the 5 days, Wednesday through Sunday, it made like 225 million. Massive hit. And we watched it. We took our daughter to go see it. Actually a pretty good movie. I don't think it's as good as the first one, but it's entertaining. They're doing a live action version of fucking Moana.
Now I'm gonna,
with The Rock.
but see,
And
now
I've seen they've shown clips behind the scenes where it's The Rock and everything, and it's like you are literally doing a live action film, a remake of a film that's not quite yet 10 years old, and you just put out the sequel that's a massive hit. That they set up, by the way, spoilers, I won't spoil the ending, but they set up, there's a scene mid-credits in Moana 2 that sets it perfectly up for Moana 3. and it's not bad. I'd be like, you know what? I'd be down for Moana 3. I'm kind of enjoying the Moana series. This does not need a live action remake. Like, this is so much like it's just rename your company Cash Grab. We're not Disney anymore, guys. We're Cash Grab. That's our branding.
It's venture capital, the entertainment corporation.
I'm going to make a slight defense of the live action Moana. If you're actually going to do a live action Moana, you should do it while The Rock's still alive or young enough to do it. Like, that would be my one defense of it. Because that's the rare chance. That's the rare. It is the rare opportunity where the voice actor can play the actual character in real life.
I understand and agree with the logic of that. I guess my underlying premise, of course, is like, you don't need to make this movie. You should.
The problem you have is the problem you have though is
The Rock can do it.
The problem you have is if they hadn't spent the last 15 years burning you on crappy live action movies, you wouldn't care. You'd be like, oh yeah, like that makes sense. Like, have The Rock do it.
Yeah, I guess.
Now I will say the other one that's been getting good buzz from like everyone that I've heard seen it. Wicked seems to be getting pretty good.
It's made a lot of money. It's been popular.
I saw the stage production. I wasn't a fan. It's not.
I have neither read the book nor seen the stage production.
It kind of. I went in with an open mind to the stage production, and I just didn't feel it. Les Miserables was way better.
Well, Les Miserables is based on a really great, like, a classic book, but I haven't seen really anything about Wicked other than if you guys saw like the viral interview. This woman, I don't even know who the interviewer was, but she interviewed, because they're doing press for the movie, but Ariana Grande and Cynthia Erivo. I'm not sure how you pronounce her name, but they're the stars, obviously. They play Glinda and Elphelba. What's her name?
There's a way of saying it, but I can't.
Yeah.
I need to see it, and because you said it now, I'm completely brain locked. So
it's a bizarre interview where, first off, Ariana Grande is like sitting there and she's holding Cynthia's just her finger, like her index finger. It's like they're not holding hands. It's just like she's holding her finger. It's like, why are you doing that? That's weird. And the interviewer is like, people are taking the lyrics of Defying Gravity and really holding space for them. And Cynthia Erivo was like, I didn't know that. That's so powerful. That's what I wanted. And it's
holding like, space thing has turned into its own meme.
It's become a meme, but it became a meme because people who watch this, myself included, are watching this, and it's like, they're speaking the English language, the saying words, but I don't understand anything that's happening, right?
It's
what should be a dumb, like, puff interview piece for a movie that came out. Like, and it's weird.
It's the main. It's like the main. I would say like the feature song.
It's the main song.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like this. It's a signature song. I that much I understand.
But see, it's gotten. But like, so being a guy, it's gotten really good word of mouth for me because it's like, yeah, my wife or my girlfriend drug me to it. Yeah, it was pretty good, even though I didn't care about it. Like, that's usually like when you get that feedback from someone, like, oh, okay, so it's a good movie then.
Outside of
if you put a gun to my head and said you have to go to Gladiator 2 or go to see Wicked, I would go to see Wicked. I'm just gonna be honest.
Really?
I saw the trailer to Gladiator 2. I'm like, no, this looks stupid.
Just lean into it and go, just shoot me. Okay, just go ahead and do it. Because
Gladiator 2 looks like they just made Gladiator 1 again with worse actors.
Well, that's kind of the point of what we're making, right? They're just remaking. They literally took a film from 2000, and here they are, like almost 25 years later. They're doing a sequel that it's unnecessary, and maybe it's a decent film. For all I know, I don't care. If I watch it, it's going to be years later on demand. I have nothing else to do.
Yeah. Now, if you want a good Alan Tudyk show that's current, I think it might be done, or they might be doing another season. But Resident Alien with him is hilarious.
He's an entertaining actor, so I'm not
he's essentially He's essentially an alien that lands and takes over the sky, and he learns to speak the human language by watching like police procedurals, especially like the really douchey CIS Miami. And he's like posing as the town doctor, and the only person that can see him is like a 10-year-old. So his rival in the show is like a 10-year-old boy. But it's fun, and it's him. So we have to pick a drama and a comedy, right, Chad?
Yeah. The idea is your favorite completed drama TV series and comedy TV series.
So I have a couple for comedies.
Go for it.
Okay, Seinfeld would be an easy one, even though the last like season is garbage. Futurama, even though the new stuff has its flaws, and then I would throw in. I think it's done because they randomly came back with like a special or something, but IT Crowd, I would throw that one in too.
I tried Seinfeld, and I didn't crack a smile the entire time. Jerry Seinfeld does not make me laugh at all. I don't know what it is, man, but he does not hit for me.
I do like Seinfeld. I felt when it was on, I didn't like it. But I feel in years since I've appreciated it more. Let me ask you this, because this probably my choice for comedy would be Curb Your Enthusiasm. Have you seen that?
I've seen a little bit of it, but I don't. Okay, this is a personal thing. If I'm watching a TV show and I hate everybody in the show, I don't want to watch more of it.
That's fair.
So,
I like
there's
Curb.
plenty of those shows.
I like Curb, but Curb makes me so uncomfortable. I can only watch so much of it, like without needing a break.
In defense of it, that is kind of the point. The point is that
it is the point, but like there are some episodes where like I get so uncomfortable, I just need to take a break just because like it works too well on me.
Yeah, the point of Curb, if you don't understand it or don't, is that Larry is the most charitable way is that he's just very socially awkward. In reality, he's just like a selfish dick, and
he's George.
It's not just
George.
Like,
The George
he is George Costanza,
yeah.
And that is why I kind of have had an appreciation for Seinfeld, because I really, really enjoy Curb, and Curb, like once you watch Curb or see enough Curb, if you go back and watch Seinfeld, you appreciate, in my opinion, you appreciate Seinfeld more because you see how much Larry David had to do with actually the success of Seinfeld, and you see a lot of his like humor.
See, I kind of look at when I think of Seinfeld, like with Jerry Seinfeld, and that I kind of actually agree with Shad's take on Seinfeld, but I often like when I watch Seinfeld, Jerry Seinfeld to me in Seinfeld the show is the straight man to everyone else around him, to like vent all their weirdness through. Like he by himself is not funny in that show. It's like George, it's Kramer, it's Elaine stuff, it's Newman, it's like all of like the other weird comics that show up, like, and he's just kind of the straight man to them.
For a contemporary to Seinfeld, Seinfeld was on the same time Mad About You was, and I really enjoyed. My wife and I loved watching Mad About You together. I like Paul Reiser. I think Paul Reiser's funny. I think Paul Reiser's really talented. I enjoy his stuff. Man, I don't get Jerry Seinfeld in the slightest. I acknowledge he's crazy successful. Absolutely. I don't get it. And I can't explain why. Like, I listened to one of his early stand-ups because I know he was one of the first observational comics. Did you ever notice kind of stuff? But even listening to like one of his early albums, I'm sitting there going, seriously? Like, y'all are like, it's like, I took my leather jacket to go get clean, and they're like, well, it got wet. We can't clean leather. He's like, so you mean cows show up? And they're like, our skin's going to get ruined because it's going to rain? And I'm like, why are you all laughing at this? This is the most bored-ass sounding stand-up. And not even funny bored. Like, I adore, oh, God, Stephen Wright. Stephen Wright's one of my favorite stand-up comics. Like, I love the dry delivery, all that sort of stuff. It's amazing. But Seinfeld stand up, I don't understand why people laugh at it.
So I have a confession to make on my end. So I do not like stand-up comedy. I've tried and I tried. I just don't like the format. I like comics. Like you can put those same comics if they're just shooting the shit with each other. Like if they're on O&A and just like those guys, like Bob Kelly and all those guys, like just ripping on each other and being themselves, like in a room for an hour. Like I'm entertained. Then I listen to their stand-up acts. I'm just like, whatever.
If I had enough money, I would buy annual season passes to our local comedy club. I enjoy good stand-up a lot. I'm sorry, Matt, go ahead.
I enjoy stand-up comedy, but I don't like everything.
No.
I feel like over time, like my tastes have kind of like changed. Like nowadays, like back in the day, I would probably been like, this is dumb. But I'm the sort that I probably back in the day, back in the day, but I mean now, based on my current, I guess, humor, I would have kind of enjoyed it, like the Andy Kaufman bit, where he's like just getting up there and he just starts reading Great Gatsby, and people would get pissed. But it's like I would kind of appreciate that because it one of those things that it's like, this is dumb. What are you doing, Andy Kaufman? And then eventually it's like, this is actually hilarious because it just gets it's like it's got really this weird alternate non-comedy comedy.
It's absurdist. It's
Yeah.
completely absurd, and I appreciate absurdism. I really do. Like, it's so goofy, and it's part of why I like Talladega Nights, the Will Ferrell NASCAR movie. It's absurd. It's
Absurdist,
goofy.
like
It's over the
surrealist.
top.
Yeah.
But it's fun. That amuses me.
A lot of, and not even so much like stand-up, but a lot of comedy, and like anti-comedy, I think is really what it is. But a lot of stuff that's anti-comedy now, I really kind of enjoyed, like Tim and Eric. A lot of stuff you see on like Adult Swim's can kind of be like anti-comedy, because the bizarreness of it, the surrealist of it, to me, like I find enjoyable. As far as stand-up, I don't like I like people who do kind of.
Patrice is the
Are in that
only
vein.
one that I've like followed to the stage and like been like entertained by.
Patrice, I love Patrice, was hilarious, and he's been gone like at least like I think like a decade. Like I miss Patrice.
At least
So
a decade,
hilarious.
maybe 12 years.
The amount of comedy that we would have got from him, like especially with all the real life events in the last like 10 years, would have been amazing. I guess to circle it back to, I guess, the Seinfeld and everything. It's like I do think I agree with Brad that almost like that he's probably the least interesting one on the show. But being a fan of Curb, I kind of appreciated Seinfeld a little more because I like Larry David. I feel a lot of Larry David stuff is funny. It is awkward. It is uncomfortable. I guess the one thing I think that I do like about that is most times even, him being a dick and his awkwardness does come back to haunt him. Like there's plenty of times in the show, almost like every episode, like the kind of selfish, rude things that he does come back to haunt him because someone he's offended or whatever like will get him back in the end. Or
Well, that's
some
Seinfeld
scenario he
too.
put himself in. That's true, but I mean, again, like Larry David had a huge influence on Seinfeld. So
the difficulty for me was because picking my favorite dramatic TV series was easy. That's justified, and I enjoy it. I'm happy with it. Even the low season, or if it wasn't compared against the other seasons it was up against, it'd probably be perfectly fine. Okay. But when it comes to pure comedy stuff, then I hit some difficulty. Because the question is, well, some of them I thought of, they're not done yet.
Well, and I know the one you would pick totally screwed itself on. Like it botched the landing so bad.
I'm getting there. I'm getting there. Yeah. Like for example, I don't love everything they do, but historically I've enjoyed more South Park than I didn't, because I think that they can do some really, honestly, really funny satire. But and I the first time I watched any of it.
The season long stuff I didn't like. I don't
Right.
think South Park was built for that. But I would say I would agree with your assessment though. And I want to toss in, they did one of the best musicals ever.
They did. They did really good musical. And Brad was referencing a show that, going back and watching it, it's like, okay, now, like, I've only seen one episode since the finale came out. Going back and watching it, I'm like, okay, like, this is, like, one of these characters is incredibly lame, but I can kind of appreciate that now. But by completely screwing the ending, I used to enjoy How I Met Your Mother, and then they screwed the ending up so hard that it ruined this series for me. Like, it was such a bad, like, the way some people, Game of Thrones was this cultural thing, and then they do the last season and everybody quit talking about it.
So they did now I've never watched How I Met Your Mother, so like, did they do like a bait and switch with like who like the mother was? Is that like what happened?
No, they did not do a bait and switch with that. Okay, here, everybody, I'm gonna do my due diligence. Okay, spoilers happening. If you care for a show that's been off the air for 10 years now, spoilers happening. You've been warned. So what they do is, through the whole series, Ted has kind of been going back. Ted's finding who he's trying to settle down with, but Ted's also kind of a shit. He's likable, but he's also kind of a shit. And they're going through all this, and he keeps wanting to get back together with Robin, who's played by Kobe Smulders. God. But then in the last season, they had this whole thing about letting it go. Like, just letting it go. That's not going to be a thing anymore. And he finally meets the mother, who actually I adored. Like, the actress they got to play her was perfect. The writing for it was great. Like, it was just excellent. And then what do? Because they wrote the ending at the beginning and didn't deviate from it. The mother dies, and Ted goes back and gets back together with Robin.
Ew.
Rendering the entire series totally pointless. The whole thing was him telling his kids this story so that they could say, no, it's okay if you go bang Aunt Robin, that's fine. Go do that. It's like, why did we sit through this whole thing?
So the mother was a footnote in the whole show.
It was the point of it, but then you don't see her until the last season. And then in the last episode, they undo a whole bunch of character development and then kill her. And then Ted gets back together with Robin. Back where they were in the first season.
Oh, fuck that shit.
Chad, I didn't watch the show. I didn't like the show. I went to this. This is a weird thing about a personal detail about myself. But when I was a kid, like in the 80s and into the 90s, probably like into the early aughts, I watched so much sitcoms. Like, and I mean, like, my parents just let me watch TV. They weren't like neglectful or anything. They just like let me watch TV.
I liked TV when I was a kid. What can I say?
Yeah.
They just let me watch TV, and I wasn't like looking at pornography or anything like bad. We didn't have HBO, so it's not as if I could see like breasts or something. It was just like cable TV, and not even like salacious cable TV. It was like, here's reruns of Golden Girls. So like, I watched tons of sitcoms, including like in the 80s, probably sitcoms of like 70s shows. Like I remember watching like Soap. You remember that?
Oh yeah, that's
like,
a great show.
Like, yeah, Benson. Like I watched like some old stuff. So I watched like a lot and stuff that was obviously airing like contemporaneously, but I watched a lot of sitcoms in the 80s and 90s. So by the early aughts, like there was some stuff that I like finished, like Seinfeld or Friends, but then I basically got burnt out from watching sitcoms for like 15, 20 years. So I've grown to like hate most sitcoms for the last like 20 something years. My long-winded story, I don't like sitcoms, and I didn't like or watch really How I Met Your Mother, but my wife watched at least some of it. So the finale was coming up. She watched it, and I watched it with her. This is years ago at this point, but I saw that, and I'm like, oh wait, so that's the mother? That's who they're talking about? And then it's like, oh, he gets married to her. Oh, they have kids. oh wait, she's dead of cancer? What?
Wow.
Is that supposed to happen? Oh wait, he's with that other, now he's back, now he's dating this other character, and they're like, oh yeah, you should do that, Dad. And it's like, look, in real life, I'm not naming names or anything, but in real life, we know someone who one of their parents died, and the other parent, after a year, like, started dating a person, and the person we know, our friend, is like, yeah, they shouldn't be alone and everything. And it's like, okay, I get it, but I'm also like, you're okay with this, like, because I mean, I would probably be the sort that's like, yeah, I'm not doing this again. I'm not dating again. I'm just gonna be alone the rest of my life. I'm okay with that.
You can't be a nun for the rest
I'm
of your
married
life,
once.
though.
I'm not trying to be like, I need companionship. But that on the show, the kids are like, yeah, do it. And it's like, this is kind of weird. Like, I kind of feel uncomfortable with this, and it's a show that I'm literally seeing now one episode of.
Yeah, so
I'm kind of weirded out.
Look, I understand that in life, some people, they want the companionship. They want that with them. That's what they had for a long time, and they feel alone. They feel bad without it. Yes, I understand. I get that. However, do not write me an entire series and then have an entire season of character development building to something that you are going to throw in the trash in the first 10, 15 minutes of your finale. Don't do that. That's insulting. It's like, but it's what we wanted this whole time. It's like, no. It's what you started out with, and then you wouldn't adjust because you came across something better. You're Vince McMahoning your plot line.
Yeah.
They couldn't have somehow worked it to where it's actually like, oh, actually, she is your mother. Like they could have twisted it somehow where it's like, oh, the story's telling you that the person who was my friend, like, oh, actually, I was swerving you guys. It was a joke. We started off as friends
because they said
actually, she was your mother. She's the one I married. Like, that's just bad writing, because they basically have done an entire series of making you care about another character, and then trying to show you, like, well, actually, this other character is important because that's actually the mother we're telling you about, and then they completely no-sold it. And not really.
And it can't be a swerve, because they said in the beginning, like, well, that's not your mom, and so they're like, well, we got to do this other thing, and they just decided it they shot the kids' reactions. The reaction was so bad when they aired it on television that they released the DVD with the alternate ending, where all that didn't happen. And it's like, look, it was horseshit, you screwed it up, and you ruined it for everybody. And there's some people who still defend it. And to them I say, you're wrong.
Matt brought up a very, I would say it's become an underrated show because people, like, it doesn't get talked about enough, but it would actually be on my short list. But Golden Girls, I actually rewatched as an adult, and man, like, some of the quips on that show are just brutal.
Yeah,
Golden Girls is actually a great show, and I didn't even put it down in my note. I mentioned Curb, but yeah, Golden Girls is actually great. I love Golden Girls.
B. Arthur is just like a thug, in like her
the line. B. Arthur's line when Betty White says, "Where are you going?" She goes, "I'm either going for ice cream or to kill someone. You'll find out which in the morning." I'm like, that's a good line. Like,
I don't remember his name, but the guy that did the roast thing where he says, "I wouldn't even fuck you with B. Arthur's dick." He said she came up to him after that show and he was worried she's gonna be mad. She's like, "You got me, you asshole." But she's
okay.
And if you want a funny bit of trivia, so if you watch that show, she's older than the woman playing her mother in that show. She's like a year or two older, I think.
Okay. So that is one that could not be my comedy. And I have one that is like, if you put the drama comedy together, one of my favorite shows, it was actually my depression show. That's Scrubs, where it puts both of them together. I really enjoyed that. There is no season 9. We had it ending at the end of season 8. There was no season 9.
Is that when it switched to networks? You know, network switches are never good for
We had a hard stop. We had a finale. But if I'm gonna say my favorite comedy, I'm probably gonna have to go with the one that has made me legit. Because if I'm sitting watching something by myself and it's funny, I don't typically laugh. Like I'm just sitting there and it's just me, and I'll smile or I'll appreciate it, but I don't typically laugh. I'll laugh when I watch it with other people. I don't know what the difference is, but one of the few that's made me just sit and laugh watching it was Community. That Community is gonna be my pick for that because they have done so much stuff that I just cackled at. I'm like, yeah, that's gonna be like the last season was kind of rough, but I really enjoyed that show. Joe McHale was hilarious. Well, okay, everybody had different ways of being funny, and after you kind of did a shakedown from season one weirdness, and everybody kind of leaned in, it's like, okay, yes, this is funny. Ken Jeong is just completely bonkers through the whole thing. I enjoy the show a lot.
I've watched some of it. I need to get through that. I'm really bad about like watching shows, unfortunately.
The Donald Glover freak out about LeVar Burton was one of the biggest belly laughs I had in years. The Christmas episodes just absolutely crack me up. The Glee Club ones, it's a Glee Club and Christmas episode, put them together, is hysterical. Like, the show cracks me up because it's poking fun at things, but it's also just funny writing.
Chad, I will say this for all the love that it gets, I would actually hands down say Community is way funnier than Parks and Recreation. Because Park and Recreation gets like a lot of love, but I think Community's, to me, funnier.
I had this realization a few years ago where I was like, man, why does... Okay, so, for example, some shows are just really good, and they hit for a lot of people. I would honestly say that Friends is just a really well-done comedy. It hit for a lot of people. And then some stuff isn't really very funny, even if it's a comedy, but it has broad appeal. It's basic, and it's the kind of crowd work that even the people in the back can see what you're doing, so it's a basic gimmick, right? That's Big Bang Theory or Two and a Half Men. Those have broad appeal. They're not. They're okay. They're not great.
You don't have to. So for me, to be a successful comedy, you don't actually have to always be funny. So like, I'll use a great example for me. So like Bob's Burgers.
Mm-hmm.
Bob's Burgers isn't always funny. It doesn't always get a laugh out of me. But when it's not being funny, like the family itself and like the dynamic of the family is interesting enough to keep me around. Even when it's not funny. But if Family Guy's not funny, like Family Guy doesn't necessarily have that dynamic to keep me keep me in. Or like The Simpsons now. Like The Simpsons of 20 years ago, like the family dynamic was enough to keep you around if it wasn't funny, which they totally lost that. But so I don't necessarily need a comedy to be fun. Like I would even say like, and even though it is funny, like the original Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, like the characters could keep me going on that one, even if it wasn't being funny at that exact moment.
Yeah. One of my favorite scenes from Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Okay, a really good one was the whole thing when Will's dad leaves again, but my favorite was the pool hall episode.
Oh, I was about to say that's my favorite too.
And it's not funny, but it's satisfying, So anyway, there you go. I even created a third one to
I still chortle at Jazz getting thrown out of the house.
Man, a good running gag is worth its weight in gold.
Yeah.
So, there you go. Justified, Scrubs is the mix, and then I'm going to say Community is...
Now you made me sad, because I miss Uncle Phil now.
Well, yeah.
You know, there's and I've been watching it. So, Amazon Prime for streaming has, like, channels that run all the time. Like, it's just like a live TV channel. They have an original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles channel. It just runs the original cartoon all the time.
Oh,
And I tune
wow.
in every now and then, and it's just like his voice is right there, and I'm like, yep, that's Shredder's voice right there.
I died on Turtle Soup.
Yeah.
They have a
I
Top Gear one
posted it.
too.
I posted it to you guys, to my friends before, but one of the great crossover gags from like early '90s TV is, if you guys recall, like you've seen it. I'm sure you have seen it. I'm sure people out there have seen it too. But when James Avery like does a cameo on Family Matters, because like someone on Family Matters mistakes the dad of Family Matters for James Avery, and he's like, "You dad from Fresh Prince?" And James Avery just shows up and he like says up, and Reginald Van Johnson, I think, Val Johnson. Like he just cannot. He just bursts out laughing and cannot control himself, and they just give a big bear hug. But
James Avery keeps it together.
I miss when those. I miss
it's one of those super endearing moments that it's like it makes you smile.
I miss when some of those shows existed in like the same universe, like how Cheers and Wings exist in the same universe.
So, check this out. Mad About You links Seinfeld and Friends together, all in the same New York City.
Oh, really?
Uh-huh. Because Paul sublet his old apartment to Kramer, and the regular waitress at their favorite restaurant, Riffs, was Phoebe's twin sister, Ursula.
Oh,
so they're all in the same continuity.
That's funny. So now for a drama, like, what are we considering a drama for the sake of this?
Not primarily a comedy, I guess.
So would like sci-fi count? Would
I thought about that, because I mean, obviously a lot of sci-fi shows can have dramatic elements and do. Because I wrote down, this isn't really my choice, because I went with more of like I felt pure drama. But I wrote down like Babylon 5. That's a sci-fi show, but it had a lot of dramatic moments.
Oh, Brad, you have thrown a wrench into me now, because I'm like, okay, in my head, here's what I'm saying. In my head...
You said Justified, which is a good choice.
But in my head, okay, the problem is now, in my head, sci-fi is a separate thing, okay? Like, drama, comedy, sci-fi is a separate thing, because Deep Space Nine is also one of my all-time favorite shows. And that ain't a comedy.
Could I count Buffy for the sake of this? I mean, it has its comedy elements, but I would say Buffy is more drama than it is. I'd say it's more drama than it is comedy.
Speaking of Deep Space Nine, shout out to the late great Tony Todd, who of course was in The Visitor, which is, my opinion,
so good.
Arguably the best Deep Space Nine episode.
It is one of, because it's got to contend within the pale moonlight.
It's on the short list. It's definitely probably top 10. At least
Here's
top 10.
Now, Matt, I'm going to screw with you also, because that was not Tony Todd's only role on Deep Space Nine. He also played Kern, Worf's brother.
That's right. Yeah, that's true. I forgot about that.
But it doesn't matter. The Visitor is so good.
Yeah.
I never thought I would sit there and sob at watching a Star Trek episode, but The Visitor did me in.
I don't know. I sobbed when Wesley went away to Starfleet Academy because I was so happy.
I've said before, like, I actually like, to me, I preferred Next Generation. We've had this conversation on the show before, but and Next Generation had like a ton of like dramatic moments. It's almost become a meme too, but I forget the episode, but there are four lights. Like Patrick does such a phenomenal job.
I can't remember the name of that episode, but it's Patrick Stewart controls it.
What a surprise that a classically trained like Shakespearean actor does a good job. Oh, what a
right.
Even when him and I would say I like TNG better, but that's like TNG's like my home. But I would even say for dramatic moments, like when him and his brother get in the fight in the vineyard. The vineyard, and then he starts like going through like, you know,
all the trauma.
Like that's that's an episode that I don't think I got it as a kid, but like the older I get, like the more I get it. And
So another really good TNG episode. Like Patrick Stewart straight up carried some of those at the strength of his performance. The one where Spock's dad, whose name I'm forgetting right now.
oh
Sarek.
yeah, Sarek.
Sarek, yeah. Sarek is supposed to be negotiating this big peace treaty, but he's in the throes of Vulcan dementia.
Yeah.
And so they do the mind meld to switch places. And you've got Sarek like conducting the thing, and it cuts back to Patrick Stewart, who they have restrained in a chair. But I mean, he is just absolutely killing it with that scene. And it's like and that episode would not have been good if they'd been like, well, we're gonna do a mind meld now, and we're gonna sedate Picard while they're swapped. It's like, oh, it worked out. It's like, well, that would have sucked, but Patrick Stewart had the chops to pull that off. So,
or the one where Data makes the daughter.
Oh yeah.
Or another great dramatic scene when Q becomes a human and they're like, well, we don't believe him, and Guinan just stabs him with a fork. Like, yep, he's human.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is even as funny as that episode is, him falling asleep where he's like, I lost consciousness. Like, yeah, you fell asleep, dude.
Yeah.
Even that one is a great episode though, like the payoff to all of that. Like, and how they do that one.
Also another great Patrick Stewart one, Darmok and Jalad at Tanagra.
Yeah.
Like we could just do the rest.
Or
wait, no, there is an equivalent. There is an equivalent of that for us. 4Corners watching Stan and Andre.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
There's one from DS9 I also love too, is the one where Nog wants to join Starfleet and his whole like going off about how his dad could do better if he just like
wouldn't be a Ferengi.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he doesn't have the lobes.
Yeah, and I also like how they gave him that task and they thought he was going to goof off, like when they had him do inventory. And they're like, oh yeah, he did it like half the time and he even found stuff we missed.
Yeah, well, Nog also had the great episode, It's Only a Paper Moon, where it was an episode about PTSD and it was really, really good. And it won awards from veterans associations for how well it handled the topic.
So we ready to head on to the main event, or do we all pick one?
No, I didn't pick mine.
I thought you said Babylon 5.
Well, I kind of said Babylon 5, but I guess my actual like real drama choice was House. I should have loved House back in the day.
Okay.
I kind of felt a little. I felt it went a little too long. The last like season or two wasn't as great, but I thought Hugh Laurie did a great job. There were some really, really dramatic episodes and dramatic moments in that.
Mm-hmm.
I think he added a lot to that because I mean he has a long history as a comedic actor, but he was incredibly good as a dramatic actor. He was really funny and charismatic on the show. But there's some really great ones. I forget if it was like the third or the fourth season finale. It's where the character Amber, who was dating Sean Patrick Flanery, I can't remember. I think
Cameron. No, not Cameron. Wilson. Yes, you're right, Wilson.
Yeah,
sorry.
Wilson. His friend, and like long story short, like House has kind of gone off the rails, and she like goes to, I guess, she's on a bus with him. The bus is in a crash. Like they are not able to identify her, but she is in the hospital. House is kind of in a coma. But long story short, she winds up essentially getting fatally injured, like because of what happened. And he kind of hallucinates or sees her in some sort of fugue state. But they have a conversation, and like just the dramatic acting by Hugh Laurie during that scene,
Mm-hmm.
which is a really like powerful scene between the two of them. And they made really smart choices with how they did that scene, because all of a sudden the backdrop of that, the musical choice was Passing Afternoon by Iron and Wine, which if you've never heard is to me like an incredibly moving but sad song.
Yeah.
The show just had a lot of like really, really fantastic moments like that. So House is kind of it for me, like a fantastic dramatic show that I mean it's been done for like over a decade at this point. It's been a long time since it.
You remind me, Matt, you're absolutely right about the music, but you remind me there's a caveat on Scrubs, is you gotta find the DVDs because the music plays such a big role. They don't have the rights on the streaming, so they don't have the right music.
I hate
and
that.
it's just
I am not that big of a fan of Scrubs, but I will say you probably know you might know the name of it, but basically the Brendan Fraser episode, that is like a gut punch.
Where do you think we are right now?
Yeah, and that is one of it's not to be cynical, but at this point, a lot of things that have happened in media, in TV, movies, everything like that doesn't necessarily surprise you anymore. But that one, seeing that was like, oh my god, like that was one of those things your jaw drops and the emotion just like crashes into you, and it's like,
yeah,
for a show that again it's kind of more of like a drama. It's a dramedy, but kind of, but it's that still, it was rough. People should have known back then. Brendan Fraser, better actor than he's given credit for. He at least finally won an Academy Award.
Yeah,
he's had
100%.
He and a lot of people I think deserve it because people understand that guy went through some stuff in his life in the last 20 years.
He got.
So
I mean, it's still. It doesn't get brought up enough that he essentially did not get gigs in Hollywood because he got sexually assaulted by the wrong, like, someone with more clout than him, and it doesn't get talked about enough.
Yeah.
Which is insanely horrific, and it's like, how can this happen? It happened.
Well, it's Hollywood.
Yeah. It happened to Terry Crews, too.
Yeah. A-list who?
Terry Crews.
I think Elijah Wood had
Elijah
Wood had something happen to him, too. Pretty sure.
Anyway.
Oh, there's a lot of.
You're 100% right, Matt. He got his career sabotaged, and then he got whenever his wife left him. I mean, they absolutely screwed him on child support because they based it off of what he made off the Mummy movies. Yeah. And he's like, "Well, this happened. I'm not getting work now." And they're like, well, "That's too bad. We're not changing it." And it's just like, holy crap! Are you serious? Like, the guy can't get roles right now, and you're gonna hang that on his neck?
Well, think about, and the thing you have to think about with that, though, so that's happening to him. Think about if you're just some poor schlub.
Yeah.
Like, you have no recourse in that situation.
I know.
So we're gonna head on to our main event. So this is the tag we talked about at the start of the hour. So this is from September 2nd. 2024. This is Sareee and Mayu Iwatani versus Chihiro Hashimoto and Veny. And this is not with any specific promotion. Like I said, this is kind of just a one shot. I think it's called like Sareee Productions, like Departure, like Chapter 5 or something like that. It's like,
yeah, Sareee is it's a. This, I mean, for those who, and I by far not some sort of expert, but in a lot of times in pro and Japanese wrestling or joshi wrestling, you will have specific workers do their own show, like they're producing a show, like a one-off show,
or they might do it for their birthday. Like you'll see a lot of like, especially in joshi, it'll be like, oh, it's my 20th birthday. Here's a wrestling show.
Yeah, they're producing like an indie show. Not necessarily as part of any promotion. They're just doing an indie show, and male wrestlers have done this a lot, but some joshi workers have done it. I think Unagi Sayaka has done it before, like recently, in a couple of years. Like she's done a couple of those shows. It happens. But Sareee is obviously for people who may have watched. Like she was in NXT.
Yeah, she's got my favorite. She's got my favorite Fed Pill tweet with that moron talking about how he hopes like Marigold is just a feeder for NXT because they'll do such great things with Sareee and people like dumbass. They had her for 2 years and didn't know what to do with her.
They didn't know what to do with her. Did a bad job with her. Then they repackaged her in what can only like charitably be described as like a stereotypical Japanese schoolgirl gimmick, which is like this is really kind of culturally insensitive
Well,
at
I
best.
don't.
And they did it for a worker who is.
If you watch this,
I would actually
you'll be
say
like, "How did they miss on her?" Like that was my.
it,
That was watching this. I'm like, "How did you miss on her?"
she is. I would argue, and I say that I mean literally. I would argue with people like that. She is legitimately probably top 5, top 10 at least in terms of female talent right now in the world. Like
She's probably
she's
like
phenomenal.
Marigold's. I would argue she's Marigold's biggest star currently, and she's probably. I don't even think Julia's working
Is
any
she
shows, but I think
is she signed with them or is she just like freelancing? But
I think
associated
she's primarily working for them. She kind of does other stuff, like obviously I think Mayu. You could tell in this Mayu's a bigger star than her, but I mean, Saree's a lot.
Mayu Iwatani is a Stardom mainstay. Her contract is really with Bushi Road,
Mm-hmm.
because she's the current IWGP Women's Champion. Bushi Road owns New Japan and also owns Stardom, so that's why she's primarily in Stardom. There's been rumors that when her contract is up, she may jump to Marigold because she actually had a good relationship with Rossi. But I don't know. Like she's also made some comments, and it's like, is that going to happen?
She made some. I thought she made some fairly like she made some negative comments because like I've been surprised with Marigold how few people have actually jumped because he only got like 3 or 4, and I thought it was going to be like more like 6 or 7, and he got like I would say he didn't really even get anyone like other than Julia, who I think he doesn't even do the shows much now. Like I don't think he got anyone that great.
She's basically full-time NXT. Like she was
Yeah.
only going to be there for like the first few months till she got her visa issues. He did get Utami Hayashishita, who is that is a big get. Like she's a top talent, but that's kind of it. Really, Mirai, who he loves. Like Rossi, like as soon as she jumped from Tokyo Joshi Pro Wrestling to Stardom, he immediately massively pushed her.
I
And
like
she's a good
her more
worker,
than
but
you, but she's not like so with Mirai. She's like she should be in that second tier of like she should be an upper mid carder, and if she is like in your top tier of workers, like you have some problems. And that's not even a negative on her. Like some people just have a ceiling. Like it's like I'm trying to think of like a WWE or like an AEW.
yeah,
Like it'd be like if you were trying to be like something happened in WWE and suddenly like Kevin Owens was like their top star suddenly, and they're trying to make that work. Like that's not a shot against Kevin Owens, but it's like no, he's not like a main eventer anymore.
He's been a main eventer because he's had the world title.
Yeah,
I
but
feel like
they've beaten him down so much though. I like
yeah.
I'm just being for me personally. Like if they do an angle and Kevin Owens is involved, I'm just like, and it's with anyone that I'm like I don't care. He's gonna lose.
I almost feel like she'd kind of be for AEW. She'd almost kind of be the equivalent of like Kyle O'Reilly.
Yeah, that'd be a good comparison.
Or like Mark Briscoe. That it's like you could put like a secondary title or even like Ring of Honor, which is at this point like a secondary brand. Like you can make them the face of that, but you're not going to be like AEW champion Mark Briscoe or AEW champion Kyle O'Reilly. Not even like as transitional, really. But and the thing about Marigold is when they first started, there's a lot of hype, and then it's kind of like no one really talks about it.
They do okay. They do okay numbers. They do a little better than Tokyo Joshi Pro, like on their like week to week stuff. But I don't. I just got Wrestle Universe again, so I'm gonna watch some Marigold stuff. Like I've heard really mixed things on it. Like I've heard the in ring's pretty good, like the talent's decent, but it's just not like there yet. I think
Yeah.
because he has a lot of I don't remember the name of the promotion they essentially just like took all the talent from, but I think they have like a lot of.
Was it Ice Ribbon?
No, I mean they'll get Ice Ribbon's about to close. I
Oh,
think.
was it Act
Yeah,
Res?
Act
Maybe.
Res. But Ice
Which
Ribbon.
without
Ice
that
Ribbon
one,
is about to close because that whole thing with people weren't getting paid, and on the last show, like a
the
bunch of their main eventers are all leaving. So I think Ice
You
Ribbon's
can't
finally
you
gonna
can't
die.
you can't Heyman a promotion. That doesn't work.
Well,
Act
Ice Ribbon's like. So Ice Ribbon has been around a long time. They had a good run, like I would say up until like 2021, where they were one of the best work rate promotions Joshi wise. But they had this president that like was pissing all the talent off. So, but they lost a bunch of people like Ryza Sarah, Suzu Suzuki left, and then this next guy
Julia
came
was
in.
there at one point.
Yeah, and this
Although
next.
there's controversy because I think when Julia left, like people didn't like the way she left. So
Yeah.
even when she went to Stardom, that was controversial. But
And then so then they have a new guy and then he's like sick or something. And so they brought the other president that they all hated, but now they're having trouble getting money because that guy like the guy with the purse strings is like hard to get a hold of because he's like ill or something. So it just seems like they're finally at their end. But there's been like it's been one of those promotions, Chad, like for the last like I'd say 3 or 4 years. Like, is this the time they finally go under? Like, is this a talent exodus that finally goes? But like, I think they.
You mean like what people kept saying about Impact?
Yeah.
Okay.
And like, I think their champion is leaving. Like, a bunch of their main eventers just said they're leaving after this thing. So I think they're toast.
That's yeah, that's tough to bounce back from.
Which is sad because
Stardom.
Ice Ribbon's been around a long time. They've really evolved over the years. Like they were a pretty good promotion.
Stardom is still probably the best Joshi promotion. I personally like still love probably Tokyo Joshi Pro the most.
The Sendai
That's the one
Girls is
that's-
pretty good.
Sendai Girls is good.
But Sendai Girls is a very small roster. Like they only have
Yeah.
maybe like 8 to 10 like contracted talent, and then they fill their cards out. Like it's kind of like their contracted talent taking on outsiders is kind of like how it goes.
Yeah. For this match, actually, like Chihiro Hashimoto,
yeah, she's a Sendai girl.
is Sendai Girls, and she's been the Sendai Girls champion. To go back real quick to Mayu Iwatani, she is contracted with Bushiroad. She's only like 30, 31. She's not old. Like she's still reasonably young, but she's been around a long time. And she is a contemporary of like Io Sky in the WWE.
And Kiri.
And they used to be, yeah.
And
they used to be a faction together, and she stuck around. Like she didn't go overseas to America. But she has done basically everything in Stardom. Like she's been champion before. Like she's had secondary titles. Like she's
been kind of
if she were,
I would say she's been kind of de-emphasized the last couple years. Like she still does stuff,
Yeah.
but I would say she's been kind of like a side piece for a while. I would say I don't know about this year. They've done a little more with her this year, but I would say it's been to the detriment of her star power that they had been doing that.
yeah. I don't know exactly how to equate her. I'll use this analogy, and I don't think it's fair to her because I think she's a better worker overall, and still has had star power that she could reclaim. But she's almost like a Seth Rollins, where it's like she's been champion, she's been a main talent, but she's kind of like de-emphasized. Seth Rollins like is still a main talent in WWE, but he's older, and it's like he's not.
She's kind of
You're not gonna probably
mid 90s Randy Savage is kind of like where she's at in her career.
maybe like, but Seth Rollins, like you're going forward. You're probably gonna see you would see main event night 1 of WrestleMania Seth Rollins, but you're not likely to see main event night 2, the real finale, the real main event of WrestleMania Seth Rollins, unless it's like Seth Rollins versus Roman Reigns versus CM Punk versus some other guy, like in a multi-man match. You're not going to be like CM Punk versus, I'm sorry, Seth Rollins versus Cody Rhodes. You're not gonna likely see that. Like,
Yeah.
mid '90s Randy Savage maybe. Like Randy Savage was in '90s, like mid '90s, like obviously a big deal in WCW because he was fresh. But yeah, she's a star. So her teaming with Sareee is there. This is like star power, and they're going up against.
And you can tell from this match by her reaction, like she is a star.
They're going up against Veny, who is really good.
She's
Veny
kind
has
of like
won.
a hot freelancer right now. Like, you know, if you watch enough joshi, she pops up everywhere. I think, and she is a freelancer by choice. I think she's not decided to sign anywhere.
She's won like the championships of some of these like smaller joshi promotions that she's done. Like she's held Wave. She may have held like the Sendai championship. I'm not sure.
I don't think she's done much Stardom, but Stardom I don't think necessarily uses a lot of freelancers currently.
No, I don't. She's been Tokyo Joshi Pro.
She's done everything. Like she's done everything I think except like Stardom and maybe like Oz Academy.
She's even done like a match or two with AEW, and AEW like 2-3 years ago did a kind of like mini Joshi tournament that I'm not sure who booked it. Probably Emi Sakura, but
yeah. And she
Vinny's
was
very good.
she was the unfortunate victim of that creep that did that like Trans World show that was like a total bomb like 2 or 3 years ago.
Oh, I forgot about that. Yeah.
Because like it seems like that was all a scam just so that person could like creep on her in person.
Yeah, I forgot about that, but yeah, there was an indie show that was done a couple years back at this point.
I meant to do a show on it because like it was like a perfect example of like how not to like run a wrestling show.
It's an individual somehow crowdfunded, I think, like a wrestling show that was specifically supposed to be for members of the LGBTQ community, including like all LGBTQ like talent, of which Veny is a member. Like Veny is transsexual for those who don't know.
And like they wanted to do a dome show, so they ran like this big venue, didn't sell that many tickets, like didn't pay the talent obviously, but like had too much talent on there.
Had Veny like, oh, stay at my house, and it was very odd. And I remember people like Indie Star. I don't know, they're trans too, but Kid Bandit, who did matches in AEW, if you recall them, they actually they or she. I'm not trying to be respectful with the pronouns, but
not sure where that one's at the moment. Yeah,
Kid Bandit legit tried to raise money to help people who were not paid,
and so some of them were like stranded.
They were trying to do like God's work and trying to help people just get compensated for their work and help them out.
Yeah,
it was a mess. I had forgotten about all that.
Because I remember after that, I actually started looking at local venues just as a thought exercise to see how much it would cost me to run a wrestling event, and being as cheap as possible, running a small card with local talent. I think I figured I could run a show for $2,200 with the venue, getting myself a ring, using only local guys, maybe splurging on someone like to pop a crowd. But that's what I figured out. I could, for around $2,000, I think I could have run a show with like.
That's cheaper than I thought.
But I'm talking about like I think I was gonna run like a 4-match card with 1 tag.
So
10 wrestlers. Maybe 12.
Interesting.
But no, I went super cheap. Like I think the gym was like $750 was my big spend there.
You could probably save a lot of money if you paid those wrestlers an exposure.
Well,
and gave them a hot dog and a handshake.
You know, you could
only
have
closers
you could have your Bradamania moment. And isn't that word?
Condiments are for closers, guys.
Yeah. Put the ketchup down.
No,
I-
I sat there and did the math. Like I researched like local facilities. Like I found a facility I thought would be good for it. I think it was like 5 to 750. I figured out what a ring would cost me to get. And like I said, I think I did 10 to 12 wrestlers because I kept it real small.
Mhm.
Um, and I think about like $2,000. I figured I could do it for about $2,000.
So that's, I
Actually
mean,
pretty
that's some pretty good work, but it's, you know,
And I'd still lose money.
yeah. Well, you've got to figure how much are you selling your tickets for, and then how much are you going to try and make off of like concessions and that sort of thing.
I figured if I ran, what did I figure? I think I figured out I could break even with like 250 fans at a certain price point, figuring in like basic concessions.
Mm.
I figured out like, or I'd only lose like, I figured out a way to I'd either break even or only lose like $300 or something.
Right.
But it was, I hardcore like sat down after that just as a thought exercise and did it. I'm like, because I was trying to think, because they did everything wrong. So I'm like, okay, I want to do this right. I'm going to do this with the express purpose of keeping it as cheap as possible and to at least like lose as little money as possible. And I think I got it to where I'd only lose a couple $100 and ran it like everything shoestring budget.
Were you factoring in like maybe recording this for like
No, because that would have upped my
Okay.
costs.
Yeah, but maybe you would have recouped those costs by people like just buying the pay-per-view.
No.
The local, so they used to run like in DC, a company which basically folded. That's a long story, but they actually ran it out of the DC Brow Brewery in DC, which is like, that's smart because I don't know how much money they paid for the venue. But they probably got the venue for like effectively free because I think it's wrestling fans. It's like, of course,
You're
at a
going to make it
brewery,
off. Yeah.
you're like, I'm sure the brewery was like, yeah, like we'll charge you nothing to have the space. Like, so you're saving money on the venue because it's like, yeah, just as long as people buy beer, and it's like, it's wrestling fans. Like, you're easily
You're
gonna
probably
pay.
going to buy beer. Yeah.
Yeah.
The brewery, all they had to do was just pay the staff to keep the place open for like 3 hours on like a Saturday or Sunday, and you're gonna make like probably a few thousand, a few hundred at least, like probably like at least 2, 3, maybe more thousand, just in people buying beers. But anyway,
I was
No,
going
I
to say, Brad,
figured-
you could also save money by getting me to come up and doing like announcing for you. I'd be willing to do that.
I figured with the camera crew,
Chad, why aren't we doing this deal? Like you and me, like we can do.
Yeah.
I figured.
Do you
So
want to
I
be
figured.
play by play or color?
I figured a camera crew.
Do you want to be play by play, or do I get to, or I could do play by play, or I could be the salty like heel commentator, the broadcast journalist. I can do either one. I could be the straight man. I could be the asshole like heel, because you got your broadcast journalist has to be the heel, right?
Yeah, something like that. Sure.
What do you wanna do?
I think I'd figured that like a camera crew would cost me a wrestler. I even figured out a couple of guys that live sort of localish that I was gonna try and like figure out like getting them to come and do like a meet and greet with it, like as part of my cost. Like I had like researched it quite a bit, like to do it right.
Oh,
But
wow.
I think I shied away from adding the camera crew because I think I figured that was probably like 2 wrestlers that I could add, or I could add like a bigger name wrestler if I forewent
get that.
recording it.
So there's a company that I've gone to a couple times now. Virginia, I think it's Virginia Pro Wrestling. They mainly run out of Norfolk, Virginia. But they've been in the DC area, like Alexandria, like just outside of DC, like I think 3 times. I've gone to like 2 of their shows. They do record it, I think, for ITV, which is I think the one run by owned by Vin Gerard from Chikara fan.
Yeah.
Because there's that. There's also Triller, which is Fight TV or was Fight TV.
Yeah.
ITV is like the smaller one, but they're recording it. I think you could like order it on pay-per-view, or if you have like a subscription, I think you get it. I don't know, like if you were to do, like you're really brainstorming this, like maybe it's worth it because maybe you could sell that, or maybe you could, I don't know, you could put it on DVD or something. I
I
don't know.
figured. I think that's something maybe run like the feeler show, and then you can kind of like go from there because what they did, the problem with what they did, they ran a venue that was too big. They brought way too many people in. Like they brought like
Oh yeah,
just way too many people in. Because that's where I think a lot of promotions go wrong is bringing in too much talent. Because like what you should do, in my opinion, if you're running a local show, you just use local guys that you can pay like 40 to $70 each, and then you maybe splurge on like a low to mid tier name. Like I'll just throw a name out there. Like you splurge on like a Mance Warner to main event. That's going to
okay,
draw some names in. That's kind of like how I think you do it. You splurge on one guy, um, and then see how it goes. Then you figure out if any of the guys you used locally have any potential. And then if it goes well, like maybe you do the next show, the same venue, but maybe, you do like Mance Warner and you get like, I don't know, like a Myron Reed.
yeah,
And then like, you know, just to add a little bit, don't go crazy because you may, and I figure you're probably going to lose like a little bit of money or break even, or maybe you'll have a whole $10 to yourself afterwards. But like, that's kind of how I figured you do it in the beginning.
Yeah, you're going to lose on the opening because you've got to build up. Just like any new
yeah,
business, you're going to lose at the opening.
yeah.
But that's how I figured you did it. You splurge on a not the huge
name.
name. Yeah, you splurge on a name that's going to get some butts and seats. You fill the rest of the card out with local guys, because their family might come too. But but you don't what you don't do is you don't run your first show and bring in like 30 wrestlers. That's what you don't do.
Oh yeah.
The only way you do that is if the 30 wrestler thing is hey, we're doing a
Battle
big
Royal.
battle royal, everybody shows up, but if you're just showing up for the battle royal, you're not getting paid. Like you make that very clear from the beginning.
Yeah, but like I said,
Yeah.
I figured for a first time show, you run 4 or 5 matches, one tag, you use 12 guys, because that keeps your costs like way down.
Yeah. Virginia Pro Wrestling, the show, the company I just mentioned, like the shows that at least 2 of the shows I've been to. I don't know what the third one was like, but they hadn't. It's because they were running in just outside of DC. Who do they have on their show? Nyla Rose, because Nyla Rose is from Washington DC. She's local, so they paid to have her on. And both times, like her match was probably like 5 minutes. Like it wasn't even like a long match. And let me put it like Nyla Rose has had better matches. The 2 matches I saw her do. She wasn't doing a whole lot, but she'd have to. And also, I've seen her have good matches before, so
You don't want to get.
saying
I'm
on her.
I'm not
saying it was on her.
I'm not saying
I'm not
anything
saying she was
bad about
dogging
the.
it.
I was gonna say I'm not gonna say anything bad about the promotion she was working for, but you don't want to get hurt working for some pissant promotion that's gonna cost you your big payday. Like, yeah, like
Well,
you're gonna take it a
her
little easy.
her opponents weren't exactly like lighting the world on fire, from what I saw. So yeah, it's like show up, and people were there to see her. Like she was like, people came like, oh, I want to get a picture with you. I'm gonna merch, like everything like that. Like yeah, it's like why not? But yeah, that's a great example. Like Nyla Rose, local star, obviously on TV, like is a name. And Nyla's absolutely hilarious, very charismatic. So that would be an example of a name. It's like, yeah, why wouldn't you want that person on your show? They're gonna hype it. Maybe they'll promote it at least on like social media. And when they're there, it's like people are gonna come to see them, and also they're gonna like do well because they're gonna be charismatic. They're gonna be fun. They're gonna like she it's besides like actually like doing the match, like she was on the mic a couple times, and it's like you're funny, like that's the thing about Nyla Rose. For those who don't follow her on social media, it's like, oh, you're actually like super charismatic and hilarious. So you can like just quip on your opponent off the cuff, and it's funny.
Was
So
this
yeah,
before she had that she died in that unfortunate
yes,
drowning
it was
accident?
before. Yes, it was before. Yes, it was. God rest her soul.
Yeah, I mean,
R.I.P.
that's all on Serpentico for like trying to make her say something nice about him. Like
That's right.
she had to make a hard decision, but like I understand.
Yeah, I wish Serpentico could be like that guy John Cruz, who is a really exemplary
Stand-up
Yes.
guy. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is like I said, this is from September. Just kind of a one-off show. Now I will say the one thing I really did like about the match is Chihiro Hashimoto. You look at her and then she wrestles exactly like how you want her to wrestle.
I tried to think of who you would equate her to
Big
in
E.
terms of like, that's actually a pretty good one.
She
So though
she wrestles like she wrestles a lot like Big E, but she wrestles like how I wish Big E would like take like some of the dumb stuff he would do, like the dives and stuff out. Like she actually wrestled more like I wish Big E would wrestle to a certain extent. But that's who my direct comparison was when I was watching her. Like this is
that's
Big E.
not a bad one. I was trying to figure out who. So Chihiro Hashimoto she's a. I'm gonna put this. I'm being diplomatic. I'm not trying to be offensive. She's a bigger gal. Not
She looks like she looks
I would
kind of
not say
like
over.
a deadlifter. She's
Like a
Yeah,
deadlifter or a shot putter.
because she's not fat.
I'm
Because
not.
if you look at her,
I'm
like
not.
she's
Oh
got
no, I'm not.
got some
I'm
big
not.
old like she's got those big old like lifter thighs and like she's kind of like a spark plug. She's kind of just like she's kind of like
She's a
do you,
brick.
Plug.
do you remember Tank
Yeah,
Toland? Do you remember Tank Toland back in
yeah.
the day? She kind of had that body type. She's stout. She's kind of like a fantasy dwarf. She's
She's
stout.
almost because in real life she's like 5'2", but she's almost like Otis in the WWE. Like she's a thick girl, and again, I'm not being disparaging. I'm not
No, it's like
commenting on
muscle.
her
It's
weight.
like a muscle.
She looks like she could. Look, I'm not a giant guy. I'm at my heaviest, probably like 175, 180. She looks like she could bench press me like easy, like not even break a sweat. Like do that. Probably two of me. Like she's a big
No,
muscular girl.
she looks a lot like Shadow. Know what I'm talking about? Probably because of the area he lives in. Because I've seen him too. But like some of those farm girls that like you would see it like that come into the city or whatever. She looks like some of those like girls that like grew up on the farm and they're just they've been dealing with bales of hay and stuff and they're just built from their like lifestyle. Like she looks a lot like
Yeah,
that.
raw bone.
Yeah.
But she moves. She's very agile and she moves really well. So it's not as if like the extra, like the power lifter weight, like has really affected her. She moves very crisply, very very quickly. A lot of agility.
Yeah.
So she has done a lot of. I haven't seen a lot of her stuff, but I've heard her, especially this year. I've heard her name thrown out. She's done a lot of tag matches with people. But a lot of people have been very high on her work this year. And again, I haven't seen a lot of it, but I've heard great things. So I was very excited to actually see her in a match, and she did not disappoint. Like she did a fantastic job in this.
Some of those deadlift suplexes she did were like awesome.
So I need to go back to something you said a minute ago, because I had listened to one of the biggest podcast, or one of the podcasts I've taken to listening most regularly is the Trish and Sarah Wrestling Podcast. And their last episode, they had a line about how someone wrestling the way you would expect them to wrestle based on how they look. Not saying that other people can't do other stuff, but you see people and you're going to kind of expect a certain style out of them based off of what you see. And this came out of a discussion of how Adam Cole doesn't really wrestle the way you would expect him to wrestle from looking at him.
No, Silas Young is always my A1 example of this because like his gimmick is he's the last real man. And then he goes in the ring and he's doing all this like flippy shit. And I'm like, if you're the last real man, The only time you should leave your feet is for a drop kick.
Yeah, and so like you said, Matt, this woman wrestles exactly like you would expect her to from looking at her. And honestly, she wrestles better than I expected because I don't know. This is the jaded part of me coming through, but I kind of expected her to be a bit of a stiff. She wasn't at
Oh
all.
no.
But
No, she almost subverts your expectations because she's a bigger gal, of course, and you're like, oh well, she's just gonna be a big stiff, like she'll do some power moves, and it's like, no, like she is quick, she's agile, like that's why I was struggling to see like who do I compare her to, because she's not just like, oh, I'm the barely mobile tank that smaller guys are gonna bounce, smaller people are gonna bounce off me. But equating her to Big E actually is not a bad comparison because Big E was quick, agile, like obviously insanely strong, but could do a lot of stuff.
There
So
was a
yeah, that's
point where
actually not a bad
she
comparison.
got Sareee in the corner and she just starts laying into her with all these forearms and stuff, and it looked brutal.
Yeah, that's as an aside, like for people who are not aware of who are just see American women wrestling. American women wrestling has dramatically improved in the last like 15 years, but Joshi wrestling has been this way for like 30, 40 years
50
probably.
years, 50 years, because we watched 80s
Yeah,
stuff that's this good. Like, here's the
yeah.
thing: if you watch this, this tag itself, which I've seen better tags than this, just as an aside, but this is still really good.
Mm.
This this blows all but maybe like a few dozen North American women's matches out of the water in every conceivable way possible. Like this
Oh
if
yeah.
if this match happened in AEW or NXT or on a WWE like pay-per-view, like people would like literally their brains would
They'd be
explode.
losing they would lose their mind. They would absolutely lose their mind. If this was like, I'm trying to think. If this was like Kyrie Sane and Io Sky against like Rhea Ripley and I don't know,
Bailey.
Candice or Bailey, like they'd be like losing their shit. Like this is one of the best women's wrestling. They would probably overhype it. It's like this is the best women's match of all time, and it's like no, but probably the best in America this year, maybe. But
I mean, this would be this is probably on my short list towards the top for like match of the year after I watched it. I mean, it's really good. And like if you watch like like when people post stuff with NXT like that's just terrible, like there's so much that they do right in this. Like spacing's always good. They're always in position. Their stuff looks good.
well,
Timing's good.
that is something that I feel is understated, and if you the more you watch Joshi wrestling, that I actually have come to appreciate. And I'm not going to even make a comment about men's Japanese wrestling, but Joshi wrestling in particular, they do a lot of things um, that I've talked about this before. That even like the people that it's almost not that it's prelim matches, but it's almost like you're lower card workers. Like I've seen lower card workers do matches that are better than some of like the high profile matches in women's wrestling in America. And I'm not trying to disparage, I'm not trying to be one of those people that's like, oh, Japanese wrestling's better. It's like, but it is because it's almost more real in the sense that they do things more crisply.
They're trained better.
They're trained better, like they are in position better. The way they even do the moves. Like I saw a match, I don't even recall like who it was. I think it could have been like Hanako and like Lady C or something like lower card, like in Stardom. And it's like they'll do arm work, whatever, and they'll do like do an arm twist, but like drop down the mat and like where and just something like that. looks more brutal than like half the stuff I've seen in America.
Well, and what I
Like
like
that's always
about
be like, here's a big spot, and it's like this arm twist looks 10 times more painful, and it was a transition move in like a Stardom prelim match, like the second match on a 10-match show, and it looks more brutal than like, oh, this is the big spot we've done on like Survivor Series or something. And I'm not trying to hate, but it's like a lot of things they'll do in a lot of Joshi wrestling. It's just there's better. I don't know how to phrase it. There's more. It seems like it means more. There maybe
they.
it's a training issue. Maybe
Well,
it's
I think
just
they also. The thing with Joshi is they wrestle their own style. They don't wrestle I think some of the issues with like North American, and this is in both companies. This is not a WWE. This is not an AEW thing. This is not an Impact thing. The women in North America just do carbon copy of what the men are doing. And when you watch Joshi, they're distinctively doing things that are a Joshi only thing. Like a great example of things that Joshi only workers do, which I actually like it. I don't know what Chad thinks about, but when they're like doing kind of their prelim stuff and they do those ankle sweeps where they then like just jump on top of them to try and get a quick pin out of it, like that is like something you see mostly in Joshi. You don't see like that in like
I regard that as a whatever spot. The other thing I was going to say is, and this is North America in general. This is not, like you said, any particular company. But Japan did not have a 30, 40-year stretch where you had one person basically putting their thumb on the scale and keeping the quality of that particular style down. It's in North America, the women's wrestling has made a lot of really big strides in a relatively short amount of time. But the problem is that the floor and ceiling in Japan are just higher by not being intentionally stagnated for so long. So, I think it's important context to put in there because I don't want anyone feeling like because you'd say you turn in and watch and you're like, I'm going to pull names out of the air. I really liked the Anna J. Mariah May match, or I really liked the Liv Morgan wrestle. I don't have a good name for it, or the last Liv Morgan Rhea match. I really like those. Okay, great, fantastic, that's fine. But the level of skill and refinement is not going to be there in the same way. And that's unfortunate, but it's true.
They don't have the we've talked about this before. Like the hesitation is not there in Joshi.
The training is different there, so it's, and you've covered that before. But it's just stepping into it and going with it. Yeah.
I also liked going back to Chihiro.
My wife was asking me about it. Hang on, let me get this thought out real quick. When we were on the way home the other day, my wife, I said, I got to watch a thing for this. And she goes, what are you watching for it? I said, it's a Joshi tag match. And she goes, okay, you got to translate that for me. I said, okay, so it's Japanese women's wrestling. And she goes, what is that like? And I said, so you have this style where you have women that are incredibly athletic, but also incredibly flexible. So they're able to do stuff that looks just absolutely horrifying, but they're okay because they've got the flexibility and the training built into it. But it's also that they're strong, but they're also relatively, by and large, relatively smaller. So they're strong, but that means that everybody is able to do more big power stuff to each other. So you have this weird mix of nasty looking submission, high speed, and high flying stuff, and this weird power stuff mixed into it that makes it different from, the other styles you see. And she looked at me and she's like, huh, okay. Because it's a weird mix as opposed to, everything else, like you said, Brad.
Yeah. So going back to the match, I also liked when Hashimoto got that ankle lock. I thought that was good. In Saree's like subtle selling of it, I thought was interesting because she didn't like go all in on like selling it, but like you could tell like she favored the ankle for a bit and then kind of went on because it was that was kind of like what the match called for.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think of it had a good pace the whole time. A lot of Veny spots looked pretty good. I thought the dives on the outside were pretty well done, even though they took some crowd people out. Um, I did like so. There's a spot, and I don't know what Mayu did, but so Veny had Sareee in like a submission hold, and Mayu kicked. I think Mayu just got confused and kicked Sareee by mistake, and the crowd just laughs at her.
Yeah, they did. That was brutal.
But she just kicked the right person. But I was like, because you kind of see the look, I'm like, oops, wrong person.
Yeah.
Veny, by the way, had some amazing kicks in this. Like they were on point. Where I don't know all of Veny's background, but to the point where it's like, have you trained in martial arts? Because you look like you have. Because it was some of these were like point on, like dead on. Like, and I mean by that I mean like you landed this just in the right spot with the right amount of force and everything that it was a little too like your hand foot coordination was dead on that you like to just be like, oh, I never trained in this, like I'm just gonna randomly like no. I feel like Veny has like martial arts, maybe like Muay Thai or something training. Like it was good kicks.
Her
I also,
springboards were really tight too. Like they had a real good snap to them.
oh yeah, yeah. Well, she's very good. She's very capable at those springboards. I've seen her do like that a lot, especially like the moonsault. She did something very early on, which I loved because it made me think immediately of Roddy Piper, and it was such a classic move where her and I think it was Mayu did
Yeah.
like I could be wrong, but they did like a spot with everything, and it's like she was like impressed by it. Like it's one of those things where it's like, oh, we're doing a bunch of moves, and it's like, oh, we stop and like look at each other, and she was like clapping. It's like that was great. Like I'm impressed by you, and it's like handshake. Like I want to shake your hand. Like it was so great. And so Mayu or sorry, I forget. Like,
I
but
think it
I
was
think it was
Mayu.
Mayu. Yeah, I think it was Mayu. Like shake her hand, then Vinny just goes like this, like
But
with the
no,
other hand, like eye
she
poke.
waited until.
And it's like that is absolutely right
But
there,
see,
Roddy
she did
Piper.
it so well though
Where it's
because
like I'm gonna
she.
eye poke you.
But what I loved about though is she did the handshake and then kind of let it sit for a second and then I poked her. Like it was the
Yeah.
timing that was like so well done. She was
It was
just
such
such
a
a.
heel move.
She was just such a dick about it. Like it was great.
Oh, and that was I thought Vinny was great as just like a bitch heel in this. Like not even like over the top, but it was just like do little things like that where it's like you're just a bitch.
No,
Like
they
you're an
did a
arrogant
real.
bitch
They
pulling
did.
shit on people because you can.
They did a real good job. Like her and Hashimoto did a real good job of like building the comeback for like Sareee and Mayu.
Yeah.
Like they did a real good job
Yeah.
of like ring management. There was a lot of good like tag stuff in this.
Yeah. To go back to Hashimoto I felt was fantastic throughout this. I actually, again, because I'm not that familiar with her, I looked it up. She was trained by Maiko Satomura, so it's like, oh well, no wonder you're good.
I mean, like,
Like,
let's be fair here. Like, I would say, like 60% of the active joshi workers have been trained by Satomura at some point in there. Like,
or Emi Sakura. Like,
yeah,
between the two of them, they trained probably the majority of
yeah.
their workers. But
Because if you don't know, if you're watching this, most joshi workers come up with a promotion. So like
yeah,
like if you're in Stardom, Stardom probably trained you. If you're with Wave, Wave probably trained you. If you're with Ice Ribbon, Ice Ribbon probably trained you. Like so that's kind of how
yeah.
it works.
Um, there was fantastic like strikes throughout everything. Like Hashimoto and Sareee had like a great like strike exchange at one point. Sareee, like again, this is part of why I think she's one of the best workers. It's not just like I mean, Shad knows this probably obviously better than either one of us, but there's more than just like a technical skill and capability of which she's very capable and very good at. But there's kind of like an intangible thing where it's like, how are you connecting with the crowd and how are you conveying what you're supposed to convey, which is like the emotion, the story of the match. And something that I got from this match, it's like she had tremendous fighting spirit. And sometimes in a match, it's just like my opponent is beating the shit out of me and I'm making a comeback. And it's something as simple as that. It's like I'm beaten down, but I keep coming back and fighting back. And the crowd gets into it. It's like, holy shit, this person is getting like everything thrown at them but the kitchen sink. And then now the kitchen sink's been thrown at them and they're still fighting. And that, as simplistic as it is, which wrestling oftentimes and at its best, I feel, is that simple, where it's two people or more. But I mean, two people butting heads in a battle of who is going to prevail. And there's many different storylines that you can do with that, but they're all simple. It's like, who's the best?
Matt, you just described the typical structure for a big-time Orange Cassidy match. He'll start off doing some stuff, and then he'll play rope-a-dope and let the other guy beat on him until the guy starts to wear down, and then he kicks it into gear. And he does it because it works.
And Orange Cassidy is a good example because he's a guy who physically is in fantastic shape. I mean, the guy I almost feel like has like washboard abs, but it's not a big guy. Like,
right.
I'm not sure how tall he is, but he's probably not more than like 6 feet. And I don't think he's more than like realistically. I'm like 175, 180 probably. He's probably like, if he's my size, I'd be shocked.
Oh, I have his autograph from Hitchcock. I have his autograph as Fire Ant, so I've been right next to him. I don't remember how big he was. Cause
he's not a
big dude. Fantastic shape, better shape than I'll ever be. But not like he's not like I'm the 200. He's not. God love him. I'm like 280, jacked to the gills, Lex Luger, and like narcissist Lex Luger back in the day.
Look, Matt, I will have you know that I am 220 pounds of rippling steel. I just happen to weigh in at 290. This is a weird callback, but Chris Statlander, I think, is just shy of 6 feet tall. And if you go back and watch the
she's that tall?
I think she's pretty tall. If you go back and watch the Floor is Lava episode, she and Cassidy are not far apart from each other in terms of height. Here, I'm gonna look it up now. Now that I've said that, let me see if I put my foot in my mouth.
He made that course look trivial until he died, but there's a point where Statlander did a jump where almost everyone that's ever made that jump has died, but she is so strong, she just pulled herself out of like a jump that like I've seen like literally like 20 other people on that show like just eat it off of.
I was wrong. Real life, she's 5'8". Oh, okay. Statlander's 5'8". Now let me look Cassidy up.
Statlander is legitimately like ridiculously strong.
Okay. Cassidy's 5'10".
Okay. Well, 2 inches, that's not that big of a difference. If 5'8" is actually somewhat tall for a female.
I actually think that's why Statlander's matches are often better than they should be. And it was very true when she wrestled Britt Baker on All In is a lot of times she's so strong she can just power through mistakes or like something that gets a little sloppy. She can just go right through it. I think that's why her matches tend to be like a lot better than they necessarily have any right to be, because she can like cover so much.
This is a weird aside. I'm only mentioning this because my oldest child, my 5-year-old, is obsessed with gymnastics, loves gymnastics. And she's a bit of a tomboy. We have her in gymnastics, not at the moment, but she's starting gymnastics again. She's done gymnastics before. She's starting again in January. Does a lot of gymnastics. Seeing Orange Cassidy, it's like you've done gymnastics before because you do things in in your wrestling and things that I've seen you do that it's like you've clearly done gymnastics
His
because the
build,
agility,
leads me to believe that too.
and,
Oh,
and the
just yeah.
agility and some of the movements that you do, it's like you clearly are very familiar with some of the motions and the tumbling and everything like that.
Just the
And
body
look, it takes.
control he has.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Because if you
and
watch the Flores
I
Lava
say that
episode,
positively.
it's like
Yeah.
effortless to him.
Yeah, yeah. The athleticism that is involved in that is actually quite impressive. So I'm saying that purely positively. So
Even the stuff like it's not appreciated when he did like stuff with like his hands in the pockets and stuff like that's not like doing a kip up without your arm, like without your hands, is like really difficult.
It takes
Oh, yeah.
incredible abdominal strength to do a kip up in the first
I
place,
mean-
and to do it without your
the core
hands.
Yeah.
the
I
core
mean-
strength you have to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, because if I tried to do a kip up with my arms, I would look like a beach seal because I wouldn't go anywhere.
Believe it or not, I used to be able to do it. Yeah, you guys would look at me and be like, "Come on!" But I at one point in my life, yes, I could.
We've watched you know who else used to be able to do it? We've watched one of his matches and he did like that really sweet like flip in the ropes, but Don Leo Jonathan used to do kip ups. And he is a big boy.
Big guy. Yeah.
But remember he did that
Shadow.
swank when he wrestled the Destroyer, that one where he did like he flipped in the ropes to get out of the arm bar.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, anyone who could actually do like a real cartwheel, like I'm impressed because I mean, Bam Bam Bigelow back in the day used to do it, and it's like that actually like you need a lot of like real good balance and agility to do that.
I mean,
Like,
some
I
of
mean,
the,
Well, now I'm sidetracked because I would say whenever I try to do a cartwheel, it basically looks like I'm doing like some sort of weird donkey kick.
I was gonna say some of the shit Vader used to do was just stupid, like the stuff Vader could do.
Vader was another guy that was incredibly athletic. Doesn't get the credit for the agility that he was for a guy his size.
And not even like the moonsault. We're talking like sunset flips, like drop kicks, like he just crazy stuff for his size.
Yeah. Well, even like obviously before his condition actually incredibly limited him, but Andre the Giant for his size was like would do athletic shit that it's like this is insane. Like even obviously his acromegalia like really impaired his ability, but it's like, dude, you're 7 feet tall and doing like drop kicks and shit like that. Like that's insane.
I mean, Big Show did that when he was younger. And there's I know it was rope assisted, but Big Show doing a kip up, like we saw that sort of stuff too. It's
I remember when it's a very underrated match, but when Big Show and Braun had that Raw match, and like Braun did the kip up, and you could hear the audience like visibly like audibly gasp when he did that. But that is we should do that on the show sometime because that match is awesome for what it is.
I think that was Show's passing the torch moment for
But
Strowman.
that match is so good.
Yeah.
It's going to depend on how many camera cuts are in it.
Yeah. But I love that match because that's just two big old boys just going at it.
Yeah.
And then Mayu didn't do like a ton, but like I said, I like this tag. I don't think it'd be my match of the year because that's probably Danielson and Swerve.
God,
right
that was
now.
really good.
Yeah, I was talking to you guys offline, but it's not yet the end of the year. We're close, but I feel there's a conversation to be had about. Because I'm presuming you're going to get Observer end of year awards. So I have some comments on who should win Wrestler of the Year.
Danielson.
And it's probably not the person that someone like Dave Meltzer is going to say. But yeah, Swerve Danielson would be up there for Match of the Year.
The other problem is though that Danielson and Zack Sabre Jr. was chef's kiss.
Danielson is
he had a stupid year.
He had That was a hell of a retirement run. More
Because
power to him.
because like his match with Hechicero is awesome, and that doesn't even come into the conversation of the best stuff he did this year.
That's probably not even the top 10 of his matches this year.
That's how stupid his year was.
And again, it's a conversation for one of the next few episodes that we do. But the fact that someone like Dave Meltzer has already kind of indicated that someone like Bryan Danielson is not even he's even mentioned Bryan Danielson as one of his potential wrestlers of the year. It's like,
I know Ospreay's his special little guy, but like Ospreay had a good year.
Very special guy.
Ospreay had a really good year. Like his Takashita match was really good. The Danielson match was good. There was another one he had. The other one that's also
the Fletcher match he just had.
Yeah, and I was gonna say that probably also. So Danielson, Zack Sabre Jr., Danielson, Swerve, and then Ospreay, MJF1 are all in contention for my match of the year. Because that 60-minute Ospreay MJF match is awesome.
It's hard for the special little guy thing has just given me such a good way of thinking about it, because it's like, okay, you've got, at this point you got to put a handicap on it, and it's just the best way of saying it. So I don't know, for the year, for me, I mean, so far we're not totally out of the woods yet, but the one that probably had the most investment for me, which is going to be the one that I'm going to say my match of the year is. For me, the match of the year is not just good stuff, it's how involved does it get me. It's probably going to be Danielson Swerve. And Swerve, I'd say, would have to be in the conversation for Wrestler of the Year, because this was his meteoric rise, even if I still think Hangman was right. But dude, what a year, right? To have this be your rise and you're making your name kind of stuff up at the top, absolutely.
I actually think, overall, I think the awards for me this year are going to be tough, because I think 2024 wasn't a particularly great year, and 2023 wasn't a particularly great year. I think AEW and Stardom were better this year, but I think what I've seen of WWE has been like far and away worse than last year. So I think that's like drug the whole. Oh, and TNH has been a dumpster this year compared to other years.
No, it's been terrible. But I'm not really sure what people were expecting when you, right at the gate, like fire Scott D'Amore and hire Tommy Dreamer.
Yeah.
Booker.
Yeah.
And I'll say as a person, I have a compassion for Tommy Dreamer. I enjoy Tommy Dreamer, but I would not have ever hired him as my booker. So
I don't think even when he was more with it mentally, his creativity was like ever that great. But
I can't hire a guy that has 2 ponytails. God.
Yeah, definitely. 3 now we can start talking at 3 again, but 2 no.
No, just doesn't work.
But yeah, I don't think 2024 for me was a particularly great year, because like I think AEW is better this year than in, because I kind of had this talk with them before. So like AEW to me this year, if we were grading it like a 1 out of 10, with 5 being like average as average can be, I would say AEW was like a 6.5 this year for me. And then last year they were probably like a 4.5 or a 5. And then 2022 for me is like, so the first half of 2022 with AEW for me, like first half is like a 9 out of 10. And then the second half of 2022 with AEW is like a 3. So that's like what
was the tipping point on that for you?
Punk getting the title and getting hurt is kind of where it all fell apart. I'd say when the Page feud started, because that didn't work, but like there was like that first like couple of months they were just on fire, like everything was awesome, and then they just kind of And like last year, they had a lot of problems last year, and this year they've had some really great moments, but I think there's been a lot of like bloat and not great with like the really great moments in there. Which last year I don't
Yeah.
think had any. I think last year really struggled for those great moments. So AEW's been like really good moments, a lot of mediocre, and then more bad than I would like.
I think the way that I put it is that the regular bar for AEW, they have met that pretty regularly, and that's good. But they've made some decisions that dip below it more than I'd like. But I mean, Brad, for what it's worth, 2023, you really disliked the MJF Adam Cole thing.
The, I
And
and there was some other issues I had with
well,
2023.
hang on, because yeah, I know you really dislike that, but then on the other hand, that drove some serious engagement, and it was over like crazy. So I don't hate on it the same way.
I
They
I
went
didn't
cold
hate.
though. They that was kind of the other problem besides that though is they were cold for like most of 2023 and like I feel like once Joe got the title like everything kind of like picked back up but like there was just um one Punk on Collision was just terrible. Like that whole fake
Yeah.
title thing that was the fake title thing did more damage than it should have. But also like
Yeah.
there was just kind of and I agree with you. I hate on the MJF Cole thing way more, but like there was just kind of a malaise to the product in 2023.
What were you gonna say, Matt?
I didn't hate on the MJF Cole thing as much as some people did. I understand and I appreciate and somewhat agree with the criticism that it was more WWE esque than AEW usually is. I didn't hate on it as much though. I think the problem that that happened, which there's it's a whole separate discussion that would take longer to discuss, but there are criticisms of Tony Khan as a booker um, that would take a long time to sort through. But one of the things that I do think a failing that he oftentimes has is that he has plans, and when things happen that just derail the plans, he still tries to make the plans happen, which in this case was Cole got legitimately injured to the point where he was basically on the shelf like a year.
Yeah.
And they still were trying to make because obviously it was leading to MJF versus Adam Cole, and they're still kind of they're still leading up to that now, like a year later. Point is, obviously the direction was leading to MJF versus Cole. Obviously that was the main event for All In at Wembley, but Adam Cole got hurt. They were still trying to make it happen until it was just too much. And honestly, I think they would have continued to try to do something with it, except that MJF got hurt, so that they had to transition it to Joe. But I didn't hate the MJF Adam Cole thing as much as some other people, but it was at the same time, it's like, look, one of these people is seriously hurt. You got to move on.
Yeah.
Because it's that the storyline you want to happen can't happen for a while. So do something else. And Tony Khan with many things like doesn't necessarily pivot like he should. And I understand sidebar, but like this is kind of like the whole thing. You obviously were trying to do a storyline where Orange Cassidy had the international title for forever, and then he lost it to Moxley, and you were going to have this big thing where Orange Cassidy like comes back and beats John Moxley for it, but Moxley gets hurt, so he has to lose the title to Rey Fenix. So then to do a Hail Mary, you had Orange Cassidy win it back from Rey Fenix. Sorry.
Yeah.
So then it's like, but now it doesn't work. It doesn't work. The storyline doesn't work, but you're trying to make it work.
And
so you should.
And I also think his other problem is like he shelves stuff. Like a great example of where his booking pisses me off is like 10 with the mask. So they're doing this thing with the masks causing the matches, and it was really interesting. And it was like he didn't want to get rid of the mask because Brody Lee gave it to him, and he wanted to honor him. But it's also damaging his career. And it was a super interesting angle, and it was obviously leading to a heel turn. Then it just goes away for 6 months. They unmasks and turns heel, and it's like, well, I don't care anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you.
So I think with the MJF Cole thing, he couldn't win for losing on that one, because for all the buildup it had, if he just cut it off when Cole got hurt, then it's like, well, what do you do with it then? It's like, well, what happened to all this build? And you're like, and then when you had both of them back, it'd be like, okay, are you going to do anything? Why aren't you doing anything with it? Why are you just letting it go? Why weren't you going to do anything? Why are you wasting time on, like, there's no way out on that particular one. And I'll be honest with you, if I was going to look back at it, I would say that it's probably because I know that it was getting ratings and I know it was drawing it, but they did have that one run too long and should have pulled the ending on it earlier than they did. But, you know, he couldn't win for losing with the outcome.
Well,
with what
again,
happened.
I didn't dislike it as much as other people, but because they did drag it out, there was silliness where it's like, oh, Adam Cole's clearly hurt. Well, let's have MJF defend the Ring of Honor tag titles by himself against like
the Righteous.
And like he wins.
He
And
absolutely
you
should
just
not
kinda-
have won that.
You just kind of chumped like the Righteous. And not to say like,
should
oh,
not have done that.
they've never recovered, but they haven't recovered. But that's also not because like of that loss, more than just like, what have you done with them in
Yeah,
like the year plus since?
That's a big problem they have. Like, he did like. I honestly think like they need to revamp their creative, and maybe he needs to take a break, or they need more like some people to help, because like I think that's the biggest issue I have with their booking for the last 2 years now, is the lack of focus. Like they'll give you something they give you something you really start sinking your teeth into, and then they kind of forget about it, or like they get distracted by a new shiny, and then it takes a back seat.
I think allegedly there are people who are some additional people who are involved, like the Moxley Death Rider stuff. Moxley is involved in this, but I think also like RJ City is like involved in some of this. Like I think has also been involved in some of like the Tony Storm.
He did the Tony, yeah.
That's fine. And Will Washington has also been involved in some of the stuff, and that's fine. I think like Tony Khan should. And again, this is like this is a conversation that
we could do a whole show on that.
Yeah, we should in depth a little later on.
I'll put that on the schedule for next week.
Yeah, one of the things that I think that is a legit criticism, I think is true. It's like, it kind of goes to your point about you lose focus. Beyond that, though, it's like you lose focus week to week in that, okay, you're going to have this big angle with like, this big star. Let's say, I'm going to throw out two names, like Daniel Garcia. At least have you big angle with like Daniel Garcia and Okada. It's like, oh, like you end the show with like Dynamite with Okada, Daniel Garcia. And it's like, and then it's like, oh, what's gonna happen next week on Dynamite?
Nothing.
And it's like, well, you don't know because you don't see them for like 2-3 weeks. And it's like, it's like I understand you trying to feature a lot of guys, but it's also like, no, how about you do this angle every week? And look, we can talk about, and I can criticize legitimately because I don't think it's good, the shit that WWE pulls, but it's like, if you're seeing an angle on Raw, like they're gonna follow it up next week.
Yeah,
like, they'll have it on there. Whether or not they do anything with it is in question, but they'll have it on there.
They'll
have it on there. Recap. So like, don't. And some of the stuff they've done this year, like the whole elite angle and everything. It's like Young Bucks. It's like, oh, Young Bucks will do a big angle, and it's like, oh, they won't show up for like 3 more weeks, and it's like, why? And then they came out. It's like, oh, well, actually, with their new contract, Young Bucks, like they have less dates on their contract. It's like, why the fuck then are you doing a big angle with them?
Well, why if you have like their dates better?
It's 52 weeks in a year. If they assigned a contract, but it's like, we only have to work 26 weeks, then it's like, okay, then book them for like 12 weeks straight, and then have them take a break, and then bring them back.
I
And
don't
it's
know
like,
why
come
that
on,
concept
guys.
was so hard.
It's not hard. So it's like, if you're gonna have a big angle, don't be like big angle, and then it's like, oh, we're not gonna see them next week. Like, literally, I know it's a joke, but it's like, especially in the era of cell phones, it's like people's attention spans are shit. So don't be like, we can do this like 2 weeks from now. It's like, no, don't. Like, I know you have like 200 guys in the roster. You want to try and fit everyone in. Just focus on, if you have to focus on a dozen guys, you focus on a dozen guys.
But you can't.
People are going to bitch about AEW at the end. Look, it is December 3rd. Juice Robinson got hurt. He's out of the Continental Classic 2. So they replace him with Commander. All I've seen on the social media feed is people bitching, oh, why did they choose Commander? Why didn't they choose a better guy like Buddy Murphy? It's like, are you people idiots? Do you not understand that the Juice Robinson role, that is now the Commander role, is to just eat fucking pins?
Yeah, like, you
and
think
if they
Juice
put
Robinson
Buddy Murphy in,
yeah,
and Buddy Murphy loses every match, you'll be like, why is Buddy Murphy losing every match? It's like, come on, are you guys stupid?
Commander and Juice.
Did you just start watching wrestling? Like,
I'm sorry, Matt.
Commander
and Juice are good enough in the ring, but they'll still be able to stay over even if they're taking losses.
But it's like, did you guys start watching wrestling like 30 minutes ago?
I mean, yeah. Commander's a more obvious jobber than Juice Robinson, but like Juice Robinson is like the weak link and all that stuff. I wanted to say too what you're saying about like people's attention spans. I think that's true, but the other thing is, you can't build momentum if you don't follow up on stuff. Like, could you imagine Great American Bash Bash at the Beach 96, and coming into Nitro right after that, and there's no NWO on Nitro?
Yeah.
Like, could you?
We'll address it next week. Can't believe what happened, but we'll talk about it next week. It's like, no.
Like, that's why Ring of Honor was always screwed up, because like when Ring of Honor was with Sinclair and they had the TV, like they would have a pay-per-view, and because they taped so far in advance, it would take literally a month of TV before like what happened at the pay-per-view that just happened was reflected on the actual TV. So you'd lose interest because there was no momentum to it, because like that's a long ass time to like actually have what you saw at the pay-per-view like have any consequences to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyway, I'll put that on the schedule for next week because I think we could have a whole show on that. But so, what did you guys think of the tag? Like, I really liked it. Like I said, this would be on my short list for match of the year. I don't think it would win, but it would definitely be in my like, probably the like middle part of my top 10, like somewhere in like the 5 to 7 range. I think for my matches of the year that I've seen.
It's a very good match, but like I said, for me, the investment is what's going to put it into that upper category for me, and I've got just enough separation with the language barrier and Joshi that I don't get as invested. Like, I can watch it and go, that was really good, but I'm not as drawn in. So I'm going to be the poopy pants about it.
Well, I have more. I think the difference too is I have more background with like several of the people too.
Yeah.
What about you, Matt?
I just was out. What was?
So we're final thoughts on the tag. I had said this is probably like in my like 5 to 7 range for match of the year. Shad said it was good, but he doesn't have like the investment with the wrestlers for it to like kind of crack into that upper tier.
So I do have the investment because I've seen these workers outside of Hashimoto before, and I was very impressed with Hashimoto. So I don't know so I would say off the top of my head, it's tough to be like, oh, I would put it my 5 to 7, but it's a very good match. It clears most American women's wrestling matches for the year.
Dave gave it 4 3/4 stars, just as a aside.
Don't know if I go that. I would say at least it's absolutely like at least 4 stars.
I give
Would
it
I go
4.5, maybe. I don't. 4 3/4 is a little
which
much.
which is like LOL that Dave did not give a women's wrestling match 5 stars. Like, oh, what a
I think
what a surprise.
I think that's a I. So I don't think I'd give
I
it 4 3/4, but I would if someone gave it 4 3/4. I'm like, that's fair, because I think other Brad said it was possibly his match of the year, and if someone had this as their match of the year, I'd be like, it's not mine, but like I don't like I
I
wouldn't blink at it being someone's match of the year.
I don't know that I would rate it. I wouldn't rate it 4 3/4. I'd
No,
put
I
at least
wouldn't
4
either.
stars. I almost would feel like I would need to watch it again to see if I would go 4 to 4.5. If I'd rate it as high as 4.5, but it is a legitimately like very good match. That's another whole separate discussion in the sense that the ratings have kind of been
Yeah, they don't mean anything.
ratings have been nerfed. That it's like I think that someone like Dave Meltzer is correct that the quality of matches in today's day and age is better than it has arguably ever been, at least across the board. It used to be like back in the 90s. It's like you got a 5-star match or 4+ star match from like All Japan Pro Wrestling. It's like, of course, like they are doing the best damn wrestling on the planet at the moment. But nowadays, like you can get a 4-star match
On TV.
at least a 4-star match in AEW for all the hate AEW gets on TV, let alone like the pay-per-views. Like you in a month of AEW programming, you can probably find a 4-star match.
I've said with the way wrestling is now though that I could literally go find wrestling in some barn in some guy's backyard with 15 people watching it and probably have someone have a 3.5-star match at the show.
Maybe. I guess point is I don't know that I would rate it that high, but it's a very good match. Like it deserves to get a very high rating, and it was a fantastic showcase for everyone. Even Mayu, who probably did the least out of this match because she was like really got a star, didn't have to do that much.
Well, she did kick the wrong person, which was still funny.
Yeah. I remember Chad was saying like at the 28-minute mark, the headbutt that Sareee gave.
Oh, that was
like,
oh God,
she's
heard that damn thing.
She's done spots like that before. It's like you are doing too much.
Do not do that. Please.
I like the context of. I didn't like the headbutt, but the context she used it in was like, because I did like the parts where they were like grabbing each other by the hair. But like just the way she used that to like kind of break an impasse, but man, that was brutal. I forgot about the headbutt because I was like, ooh.
Yeah, and you didn't hear a thud. You heard like a crack when it hit.
Yeah.
And I was just like, no.
Yeah, that was rough. I also found out Meltzer, the Okada Omega match wasn't when he first broke the 5-star barrier. The first 6-star match he gave was for Flair and Steamboat in Landover, Maryland in '89. Is the first like 1 6-star match.
Yeah, it's one that there's no footage for, but
allegedly I think there is footage.
Yeah,
right?
that one I think that one is on tape somewhere.
I don't know how easy it is to acquire it. We've discussed this before, but I disagree that there is better than you should have limits. So 5-star should be like the limit. It should be like, well, actually no, it's not. There's no limit. Like actually, this match, that you've never seen, that only like a handful of people have ever seen footage of, is actually 6 stars. And it's like, come on.
That's why I don't like.
You wouldn't know this match. It goes to another school.
Well, that's why I don't hardcore like snowflake stuff, because like it's an ever-changing scale. Like something I gave 4.5 stars to 20 years ago probably wouldn't be 4.5 stars now because I've seen better stuff. Like that's kind of the problem with snowflaking stuff is like it's ever changing and things are gonna move down as you see better stuff. Like sure, some things are gonna stand the test of time, but like what do you do if like there is something that you would consider a 6-star match? What does that and you have to rate it 5 stars? What does that do to every other 5-star match you have? Like that's kind of the problem with snowflaking stuff.
Just put it on your upper echelon, and then if you need to, you can go back and say, okay, of everything I put on this echelon, I'll rank this stuff.
Yeah, because like I would just have the list of like if someone asked like what are some good matches, like I would just give them a list. I wouldn't like snowflake it. Like this would probably just go on a list with everything else and like, yeah, watch this.
Yeah.
Okay, well I think that is it this week because I am starting to fall asleep on my feet.
Yeah.
So thank you for joining us as always. We've been in 3 corners and you've been in the 4th. Like I said, I'm going to put on for next week's show, we're going to dive even further into like the AEW booking. Shall we call it a quandary?
I think we can call it an AEW booking examination because there's stuff that works and stuff that's not, and everyone's going to develop bad habits.
Yeah. So that has been it for this week. Thank you for joining as always, and we will catch you next